Good evening. We'll now return to open session. We have no reportable action items taken in closed session. The graduation waivers are part of the consent agenda. And now I'd like to ask if there's any board member or student trustee that would be willing to volunteer to read the board norms at the beginning of the meeting and then touch upon anything that we did well and anything we could improve on at the end of the meeting. So I see you all jumping up and down over there. So I'll look in this direction. They're looking at me like it's my turn, I think, aren't you? Yes, you are. Okay, I will volunteer. I got that body language loud and clear. So I will volunteer to read the norms, and I'll read the norms. And then what I'm going to do is ask for a trustee to approve the agenda, but I'm also going to ask that you consider item 12C, tabling title item 12C, which is the report on youth vaping prevention due to staff illness, and tabling it to the November 19th meeting. But first I'll read the board norms. Yes?
Maybe why we look confused is I think normally we approve the agenda and then do the norms. So that's...
Well, tonight we're doing it in different order, so I'm sorry if you're confused, but... Okay, see, and then we can make sure we do the norms right when we approve the agenda, so we can look at it. Okay, the board will come prepared and fully present and engaged, deliberate effectively and listen openly without interrupting, work collaboratively and strive for consensus, maintain perspective with a sense of humor, not repeat each other or ourselves, not have side conversations, give full attention to the proceedings, no cell phone use. Focus on the best interest of the students and commit to no surprises. Okay, so now if I can ask for someone to move to approve the agenda with item 12C tabled until November 19th, so remove that from the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So now we move on to the consent agenda, and first I'll ask if there's any public comment on the consent agenda. Okay, no public comment on the consent agenda. Do any trustees wish to remove any item from the consent agenda in order to evaluate it as a standalone item? Nope. Okay, so can I ask for an approval of the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. That passed. So board communications, you'll notice in the packet we included this time a letter from Mimi Willard, and this letter actually came the day of the last board meeting, so it didn't make it on the agenda. And this letter was a follow-up letter from Laura Effel, also from COST a couple months ago, and I think what I told you during that meeting is that I would look into some of these matters and asked for consensus that I would respond to the letter, and you all nodded your heads. I got more information recently. I've not responded to the letter yet, but I just wanted to share a little bit with you before I return the letter to Mimi. In terms of I wanted to let you know, because you weren't here when we were in this phase with the previous Measure J, and it was before it was even Measure J. It was when we were in the planning exploratory step. So that was a couple years ago, and we did actually consider the square footage issue. It was done at the district level. It didn't make it to the full board. There were two board members, myself and Laura Anderson, who were on the subcommittee that would review the resolution and meet with the consultant that time. And so we did ask for advice from our attorney, and we were advised at that time that it was an issue that could be easily disputed. There was too many areas that were not clear in statute, and that we would be at risk of being sued. And the issue with that is that not only the cost of being sued, but the time that would be required to defend ourselves. And it could easily be one of those situations where the parcel tax could have passed, but then we'd be in a lawsuit and it could take 18 months to 2 years to get resolved, and that would have meant we would have been in a position of not having the money. We'd have the money but not sure we should spend it. And so that, along with some other considerations at the time, the former superintendent decided not to bring it to the board, and the two of us on the subcommittee were in support of that. So it didn't make it that far. So this time around, I'm kind of sorry to see that there's a perception that we are ignoring some of these issues, but that's not the case. And I think I mentioned to you at the last meeting, I was going to follow up with our attorney and report back to you, and I'm really glad to see William Tunick here. So when we talk about the resolution, he's agreed to provide you a little bit more backup, but the gist of it is, while things are more clear, they're still not crystal clear, and we'd be setting ourselves up in the same situation. And then I think what I shared with you also is that the issue too, when I did a little bit of research, was that yes, we did develop the value based on some rigorous evaluation done by the financial department along with the superintendent. And that still holds, but now we would be having to go back and come up with metrics to how would that translate into square footage. And it really, when you start digging into it, this would not be an easy task. And so that, on top of some of the other issues I know we've talked about, but I did confirm that. Other parts of this letter I think we have discussed, but we may want to consider again. One issue too I wanted to share with you, because this also was something decided with the former board. We used to have public comment on items not on the agenda until last, I want to say it was June, a year ago June, and it was before Tara became superintendent. Yeah, so it was a while ago, and the reasoning for that is that that time our board meetings were lasting until easily 10 o'clock at night. And we had public comment on many agenda items that we really wanted to hear from the public, but we had a lot of board business to do. And we felt that the public comment part of the agenda was better served by the end of the evening when we were strictly listening and we weren't taking any formal action. And so we made that shift. And so I think, as noted in this letter, there's some that have the concern that by doing that, we're not being as transparent or as open. And I think that's something we did talk a little bit about in our governance meeting that we had, but we may want to discuss it again. We still have the issue that we get public comment throughout the evening, depending on the agenda. So I just wanted to follow up with that. And I'll be sharing a very general, kind of high-level discussion when I return the letter. So thank you for, wanted to give you an update on that. So now we move on from board communications to the student trustee reports. And Devonna, I'm really happy to see you. I'm really glad you're here. Good. So who would like to start?
I can start.
Thank you, Lauren, from Redwood.
So Redwood is starting thank you. School-wide fundraiser starting tomorrow in homeroom. So that's for Family House, which I explained last meeting, but it provides housing to people who are dealing with long-term illnesses and their families. And our ASB president promised that he will shave his head if we raise $5,000 as a school. And we usually raise around $2,500, so he's hoping to get that to $5,000. I mean, we're doing all the money collection in homeroom because we're still not allowed to do it online. But our homecoming dance was canceled. It was supposed to be October 26th, but because of the power outages, leadership is looking to reschedule and maybe rebrand that as a winter formal, potentially in January. We're looking at a few dates. but avoiding like basketball practices in the gym and things like that. Field hockey, girls cross country, and football all have won MCALs already, and now winter sports are starting tryouts. We still managed to have the homecoming game, the football game, and we had 2 royalty crowned. So that was Garrett Cook and Joey Calzaretta. And no one seemed opposed to that. This is the 3rd year that we've had the possibility of having 2 kings or 2 queens, but there was just some confusion for people like regarding the selection process. So I know some kids were confused if it was just the 2 people that got the most votes, or if it was the top vote getter for boys and then the top vote getter for girls that would be given king and queen. So leadership has been discussing that and working on communication for that in the future. And yeah, that's all.
And I'm from TAM. So some TAM programs won awards actually within the last couple weeks. The TAM News was a Crown Award finalist for the 5th year in a row, meaning that we're top 50 in the country. And I'll find out in the spring if we're a Gold Crown, which we got last year, which means top 20 in the country, which is super exciting. And one of the kids on staff, who I believe is in Pathways this year or might just be attending Tamascow, who's still on staff with the TAM News, actually has a whole fire suit, and he went up to the Kincaid fires, if I'm pronouncing them right, and it has his photos published not only on the cover of the TAM News, but also in CNN, ABC, Fox, Chicago Tribune, The Guardian, and USA Today. And the Redwood Bark. So he's made it into the field, which is very exciting. We also, including students in the field, a TAM student, I'm not 100% sure if he's still attending, but definitely was in my Spanish class last year, just signed with the San Jose, Earthquakes, with soccer. He's a 16-year-old senior who just signed with them, so that's also exciting. So professional seniors at TAM. Our Academy of Integrated Humanities and New Media, also known as AIM, won some student Emmys again this year, which is the highest high school filmmakers award that can be given. This past week in leadership, after homecoming and our TAM Unity Day was over, there's been talk kind of in the leadership off season, as we like to call it, in between kind of rallies and spirit days and dances. We're trying to see if we can reform leadership to not only work within campus on spirit events, but also forming task forces to deal with issues on campus that we feel like need student opinion. So already they're trying to work on a scheduling committee for next year to make sure that the kind of chaos that happened this year doesn't happen. Parking, mental health, wellness, kind of working with administrators and kind of trying to see if we can get like a monthly time where these task forces can meet with administrators and wellness coordinators and the MVPD about parking and all that kind of stuff to try and get our voices heard a little bit more. And our TAM Unity Day was a super success. It was a closed campus, but it didn't seem like they super had to force kids to stay. Kids definitely left, but places sold out of food. Our boba place sold out. The grilled cheese guy was like scrambling to make things work, but it was a super successful. Everyone loved it. We're running out of food. Wellness ran out of condoms to distribute, so condom certification was a success. There was arts and crafts, student versus staff basketball, clubs were handing out. Reusable straws was a popular one, but it was a super success, and I think they're going to do the closed campus again in the future. So, yeah.
Thank you. Devana.
With this being the end of our R2 grading period this Friday, we're kind of slowing down and just focusing mainly on work, though yesterday we did have a basketball game between students and teachers, and it was kind of like a blend. Both teams had some teachers and some students. It was really fun. Everyone had like a lot of fun, but I completely forgot the score. Sorry. But yeah, we're pretty much just prepping for our next grading period, which is going to be the last grading period of this year, which everyone's kind of excited about, especially the people who will be graduating early.
So the week before the week of the power outages, we had our homecoming, and the week before, leading up to homecoming, PR did a consent week. So that was doing like presentations and booths about consent and trying to make sure that students were informed, and then at the dance, all PR, SOAR, and leadership kids wore glow-in-the-dark bracelets during the dance so that anyone who felt uncomfortable or wasn't having a good time or was mad at their friends or for whatever reason could go up to those kids and talk to them. And that seemed to go over very well, especially because at our dance we sold 1,000 tickets. And for Drake, which is like 1,200, that is a lot of the school. Our dances are very, very well attended, especially homecoming. So it was really good to have those kids, because that is such a big dance and so many people, it was really nice to have those kids be support there, especially for all the freshmen who this is their first dance. Also, CDISC just finished their creek restoration project. So CDISC is our junior-senior environmental academy. So they were doing restoration in the creek by Drake, and a lot of that is weeding all non-native plants there. And they also had to write a research paper, which ended up being 15 to 20 pages long. So that was a very big project for them. The Tahitian students are here, and in our tutorial today, they performed a dance that they had prepared, and that's always very well attended. You have to sign up ahead of time because it always gets booked up way in advance because all the students want to see it, and our theater is only so big. Our SOAR has started doing presentations in our freshman, sophomore social issues classes. So these presentations are focusing on microaggressions. Last year, during our first day of school, SOAR did microaggression presentations that didn't go entirely well over with the school. There was some backlash and just teenagers joking about the presentations, not taking the issue seriously. But SOAR is hoping that if it's in the context of a social issues class, when people have been more thinking about these issues in a longer time period and the class is specifically focused on these types of issues, then students will be more prepared to be accepting to learning new things about these issues and about microaggressions. And then finally, we have a new drama teacher. I think this is his second year, no, this is his first year. This is his first year. And so they did the first play with him, which just closed, and that went over really well. And then also, this is the first year of our new Jolly Roger advisor, John Weller, and we've printed the first Jolly Roger of the year with the new advisor, and I personally think that it's one of the best Jolly Rogers I've seen in my 4 years at Drake. It's really stepped up in professionalism and quality, and I brought a copy if you guys would like to see, so I can pass that around. And that's it. No, I probably should have. Thank you so much. We also, I think, have a website now. Yeah. So you can also, it's online for the first time ever, which is very exciting. Well, first time in a while.
Yeah, in a while.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Charlotte.
Okay, so during blackout week, we didn't have class Monday through Thursday, Monday through Wednesday. We came back Thursday, but for most classes, we only have school 1 day or 2 days a week, so that was it. So we still had to do our homework for those classes, so we got hours for that week. But since we lost our instruction time, some homework was confusing, some students weren't able to do it. Teachers are very understanding. They understood. They gave students lots of wiggle room. They gave them lots of time to make up the work, lots of time to turn it in late. It's all okay, but since we're heading towards finals week, and some finals have already been given out, papers and things like that, time is now precious. During blackout week, our Halloween party had to be postponed. It was originally planned on Tuesday, but luckily we got everything planned and we had it on Thursday, which was actually Halloween. We had it originally planned for Tuesday because that was our advisory day. Julie Gannon, our college counselor extraordinaire, handled everything during the blackout really well. Because the blackout week happened on the deadline for many seniors to turn in college applications. Yes, it was very stressful. No Wi-Fi, no way to turn in applications. So she was able to send out an email to all of the seniors telling them, if you don't have Wi-Fi, there is something for you to do. You can come to these places and you can turn in your applications. Luckily, power got turned on the day before it was actually due, but as it was still terrifying for some seniors, it was not a good situation to be in. Something else that Julie is dealing with, since we have double the amount of seniors this year as to last year's and many years prior because of the Pathways program, Julie and Grace, our counselors, have been handling the situation, especially during college application season, very well. It has been a lot more work on their part, and you can definitely see it in their calendars and their scheduling. It's been harder to get appointments with them, but they have been handling it with grace. So I thank you to them. I say thank you to them. Now for CEC, they've been doing a lot of community building exercises. They've truly built a lovely classroom. They've been going beyond CELIS, their online program this year. They've been working a lot with John Black, our science teacher, to do labs. They work with the labs to get sort of more science experience than CELIS previously gave them. So John, our chemistry teacher, does what he can with sort of our limited chemistry resources at Tamalpais. We sadly don't have that space yet. We will be getting it this summer. Thank you. So yeah, that is going really well. Kate, our SIS tutor, has been starting a math workshop for people who need extra math tutoring. It's a group sort of tutoring session. Anyone who needs help can go in. It's from anywhere from algebra to pre-calculus, and it has really been a success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Those were all really good presentations. Appreciate it. So now we'll move on to trustee considerations.
Yeah, so tonight we have Jonathan Eldridge here from College of Marin to discuss the Compass program, and we have the MOU for the continuation of the Compass program for the board to consider.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Is this working? I might be too tall for the microphone. I apologize. I will try to project. As I start, I'd like to hand out copies of our Compass report, hard copies.
Great. Thank you.
They're enough for everyone over there. And then I also brought some additional ones. There's some on the back table, and pass some around for the audience as well. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's my privilege to be
Thank
representing our superintendent president, David Wayne Kuhn, our trustees, faculty, staff, and students of College of Marin. And we are thrilled to be in partnership with the school district on a number of fronts. I want to talk specifically a little bit about Compass. Some of you may be more familiar than others with the program and its iteration at TAM High School. I won't talk too long. I want to leave time for questions if you have any. But as a little bit of background or a little bit of context, when I arrived at College of Marin almost 7 years ago, we would routinely have maybe 100 concurrently enrolled high school students across the county at any given time at the college. These are high school students taking college courses or taking a college course here or there. We now, any given semester, have upwards of 500 students taking college courses. And we believe that's critically important because obviously the more students who have an understanding of and experience with college curriculum, the college setting, what it means to be a college student, that's going to serve them all well once they graduate from high school, regardless of their educational goals, whether that be to go directly into the workforce or to higher education. So it was about 6 years ago when a principal at Terra Linda High School by the name of Lars Christensen came to College of Marin and said, you know, you are the College of No. Anytime we want to partner with you or anytime there's a partnership opportunity, the answer is, oh, there's some reason college won't do it. And I was fairly new at the time and said, well, I think we need to change that. And so I think now we have gotten to the point where we are much more engaged, and we have said yes a lot, and I think for the right reasons. And that has led to us really questioning how can we help more students, all students in Marin, see college as an inevitability, not just a possibility, and for some a remote possibility. As a little context, I just received some, or reviewed some statistics, and out of the 9 Bay Area counties, College of Marin is 3rd out of 9 when it comes to students completing their A to G requirements, which isn't bad. Always be great to be number 1, but it isn't bad. But Marin County is 8th out of 9 if you're an African American student or a Latinx student. So we're near the bottom. Now that is the definition of inequity. And equity, of course, as we all know and we're all committed to, is recognizing historic and systemic barriers to opportunity and outcomes and providing the resources to address those inequities, right? And so at the college we said, well, we are not very good at helping students get ready for college once they're in college. And a lot of the students who don't complete A to G come to us. And we traditionally have not done really well at helping them to their educational goals. And we said, well, if these are issues at the K-12 level and we're having these issues, then maybe we really ought to work more in partnership. We ought to have a more coherent, integrated approach to this. So we sat down, and Lars was involved in this, as were principals from around and superintendents and others from around the county. And we engaged with them, we engaged with teachers, we engaged with counselors, we engaged with community members. And what came from that was this little pilot program, this Compass program, College of Marin Providing Access and Supporting Success. And the idea behind it was that we would take first-generation students, low-income students, students of color, and basically say to them when they enter high school in the 9th grade, you're now a college student. And we will enroll you in a counseling class at College of Marin, and you can be the first in your high schools to be college students. And if we do that, and if we couple the right resources, and if we truly approach it as a partnership with the local with the site high school, what would happen? Can we affect those A to G completion rates? Can we affect the self-efficacy of students as they look to make decisions around college? And can we make an impact in the county, both with individual students and then collectively? That was 5 years ago. And this last spring, we started out with 2 cohorts, one at San Marin High School, 9th graders, and one at Terra Linda High School. And those students graduated from high school this past spring. All of them graduated, except for one who moved away. All but one are going to college. The one is going directly into the military and will be going to college afterwards. What I'm sort of proud to say is that only half of them are coming to College of Marin. And the deal with Compass is if you go through the 4 years of the program, so take the courses, become concurrently enrolled, work with our folks, meet the qualifications that we establish in the contract that we have with the students, their parents, the local principal, and us, you can come to College of Marin for free. 2 years, completely free. And not just free as in that $46 a unit, but books and everything. But only half of them took us up on that, because the other half went to 4-year institutions. So we have in Marin County less than 30% of the students who are of the demographic in the Compass cohort complete A to G, and yet over half of them, well over half of them in that first cohort, were able to, and half of them went to 4-year institutions because they completed their A to G requirements. And what we're finding is that over the next few years, with the cohorts coming through, we're seeing varying levels of success around A to G specifically. But what we are finding is that students stay in the program, students do take college credits while they're in high school, students do gain that self-efficacy, and all of them have college plans at this point. And our goal eventually is to have at least 70% of the participants in the program complete their A to G requirements and go on to pursue higher education at a 4-year institution, either before or after College of Marin, and have the rest of them come to us, and we'll help the same thing happen. So we now have seniors and juniors and sophomores and freshmen at Tam High School. And I'm joined tonight by Nigel Hakens, who's our Compass coordinator for Tam. So Nigel is our staff member who works with Principal Farr and with Assistant Principal Snow and Hatton and other staff and faculty there at TAM along with Troy Stevenson, who is our faculty counselor, who teaches the core class for the 2 semesters in the freshman year. And Nigel works with students all the way through and helps them decide which college classes are right along the way for them once they complete that those first year counseling courses, and helps make sure that they're preparing financially and otherwise for college, engaging the parents, and all of the things that you can see in the report. Just want to talk about a couple of pieces with this. One is that we, in addition to having the Compass program now fully established, and we're excited to have the initial graduates from Tam High School this next spring, and we will be giving them stoles to add to their regalia, and we'll be having a ceremony with them, and you're all invited to come to College of Marin in the spring. And we will be welcoming, I'm sure, some of them to College of Marin full-time in the fall. But in addition to that, the college has expanded its efforts in partnership with the local high schools and with MCOE more broadly than that. So we now have over 300 students every summer participate in our summer career academies, and we're expanding those and we're getting those focused. This last year we had 10 Compass students from TAM, most of them rising sophomores, juniors, and a few seniors attend different summer academies, from entrepreneurship to solar power to coding to virtual reality to a variety of others, and those will be continuing to expand with the idea that the students who complete the career academies will have the necessary skills to then go into one or more very specific intro-level, college-level courses and be able to take those while they're enrolled in high school so that they can amass those units ahead of time. We had one student who graduated from the Compass program this last spring, completed 27 units at College of Marin by the time he graduated high school. And this is a student, when he entered Compass, was like, well, I may or may not want to go to college. I'm not entirely sure. I guess I'll be in this program. And after his freshman year, he said, it was very interesting, when he was asked what he wanted to do with his education, he said, I'm going to be an engineer. And I'm going to make sure that my mom is taken care of because she's taking care of me. When he graduated, he came up to me and he said, you know, I hope it's okay. I've changed my major. Now I'm going to major in pure mathematics. And I said, I think that's probably okay. But these are our Compass students, and we'll be seeing more and more of them, and we're very happy that this is such a partnership with TAM. This next Friday the 15th, not this coming Friday, but next Friday the 15th, you're all invited to join our 9th grade TAM Compass students when they come to the Kentfield campus for a day. They'll be interacting with our faculty in the classroom, learning about a variety of subjects, getting to go into our nursing simulation lab, going into our science facilities, sitting with faculty and having discussions about their future plans, and to reinforce that they are College of Marin students, and that this is their campus as well. We'll be getting them to the Novato campus, to the Indian Valley campus as well, and working with all of them to make sure that they are pursuing whatever it is that they discern to be their educational goals moving forward. I did want to say that there are 25 students in the 9th grade Compass cohort, and we also, across Compass, we have over 20 parents who are enrolled as College of Marin students as well. I mentioned that a lot of them are first generation, and we're finding ways to engage parents not only in their students' educational futures, but in their own as well. Now, I want to speak just for a minute, and then I'll tell a quick story and be done. But the MOU that you have on your agenda tonight, we have an MOU with each of the districts where we have Compass sites, and this really allows us to have that partnership be seamless. It allows Nigel to be able to work with the counselors on the site to look at student grades, to help diagnose, as a student placed in the right courses, can we adjust to make sure they stay on track for A to G. It allows us to bypass some of the red tape that is more in some districts than here when it comes to getting students off of their high school campus and onto our campus, and a variety of other things. So it really frames that partnership, and I think when you look at it, you can see that this isn't a program that we do and you're host, but it really is a partnership, and we're thankful for the commitment that goes into that. And a lot of that happens at the school site, but certainly at the district level, without the support, it wouldn't happen either. We have over 250 students across the county now in Compass, and we're happy to have 75 or so in the TAM district. Ultimately, we would love to take Compass to scale and expand out to Redwood and to Drake and to other places. That's going to be a matter of honing what we're doing, because this pilot, this experiment, is now finally seeing students enrolled in college. We identified what really works, what kind of works, what we still need to work on. And over the next 5 years, we're going to be determining how can we bring that further along, because we really do believe that it can be I guess a policy level, a systems level change agent for that equity issue that we face as a county. So just real quickly, I end with this story. You may or may not be aware of the Excellence Club at TAM, which began this fall. And it was started by Hajra Yakubali and Jade Sweeney, who are 2 Compass students. And it was started because they wanted to provide students of color at TAM the opportunity to pool their voices and have a collective impact on TAM High policy and culture. I'm not sure whether they may have done this if they weren't part of the Compass program, but we would like to think that these students, who are the same students, who came to me during one of their field trips and said, we'd like Compass sweatshirts. And I said, okay, we'll make it happen. No other high schools have Compass sweatshirts, but every year there are, and I don't know what it is, but it's about, but the students at TAM always find a way to say, we want Compass sweatshirts. We want to say College of Marin, our school, and our graduation year on there, and we've been able to do that for them. Hajra actually asked me if they could go with Compass pants this next year. I don't know how we're going to pull that off, but we'll see what we can do. But I think it's a great example of the engagement of these students, and I have no doubt that Hajra and Jade may very well not come to College of Marin when they graduate high school, because they will probably have lots of options. If we end up being that option, that's wonderful, and we will help them complete their transfer requirements and go on to wherever they'd like to go on to. If they go directly onto a four-year institution, then we'll consider it a success as well. None of it would happen if it weren't for the partnership, if it weren't for the hard work of the faculty, the staff, and others. And the last thing I'll say is that we've been working with Principal Farr and others to offer what we offer at a lot of high schools in the county, which are satellite classes. And this is where our faculty come out and teach our courses at a high school. And it's designed as an introductory course so that students who might have transportation issues, might have other activities that they can't get to one of our campuses when we offer these courses, the ability to take a course so that they gain confidence, and then they can come to us and take other courses as concurrently enrolled high school students and beyond. So I'm pleased that in the spring we'll be offering an ethnic studies introductory course at Tam High School. And while we know that we'll have a lot of Compass students involved in that, all students certainly are welcome. And as I said, these satellite courses have been great for us because it's been a good introduction for a lot of students to what college is. We have high success rates with those courses, and they not only support the Compass program, but I think they really support what I know Mary Jane Burke has said repeatedly, which is she would love to see every graduate of a Marin County school has college credit by the time they graduate high school. So we're trying to do our part to assist with that. And again, thank you very much for your time here this evening and for hopefully endorsing the MOU so that we can continue to provide and expand the Compass program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very enlightening. And before you step away, I want to open it up. If any board members have any questions?
I guess in terms of the meeting A through G, you talked about some of the varying levels of success that we've seen there in terms of the different classes graduating. What have you learned from it in terms of what's most successful now? And do you think about it? Is there a chance to enlarge this beyond 25?
Well, we wouldn't enlarge a cohort beyond 25, but we could have more than one cohort at a high school. That's one of the things we've talked about and we experiment with, because certainly there's a need for that. In terms of what has an impact on A to G, to be perfectly frank, what we find in terms of our biases play out in high schools as well. And it's less about the student and more about the assumptions about the student. And so whether that's, and I don't believe that there are any counselors out there intentionally trying to keep certain students out of certain paths, but I think there are assumptions made early on. I think then in the classroom, if certain grades are earned, that reinforces those expectations. And what we've tried to do with Compass, and I think we've been very successful in engaging in these conversations, is how much of this is really about the student and how much of it is about the systems in place that are in the way of the student finding success. And if we keep, and at the college, we're working very hard, and it's fully built into our new strategic plan, that we want to take ownership for those issues rather than say this is an institutional malfunction or an institutional deficit, not a student deficit. Students don't have deficits. Our view of them is the deficit oftentimes. And so when we don't think enough of the potential for students, and that's why what we have noticed with Compass is we'll ask students coming in to write what their impression of college is or how they view this. We'll ask them again at the end of the freshman year. One example, a couple of years ago we had a group of Compass students on our campus, and we happened to have a donor on campus that day who ran into them and said, oh, well, when you go to college, what do you want? And the young woman interrupted him and said, no, we are college students. We have found that idea that it's not about whether I am capable of, but I already am, is a huge factor in showing students that institutions have belief in them. And there's no reason that they can't succeed because we're showing them that they are. And that in their self-efficacy is huge. But in the meantime, we have to look at policies, we have to look at procedures, we have to look at things. There are never enough counselors to advise enough students on which courses to take and how to do all of that. We know that, we struggle with that. That's part of how when we add Nigel into the equation, we add our counselors or our staff into the equation, working with counselors and assistant principals to really look at these students and say, wait a minute, let's do something different with this. Let's do something other than what we typically would. The case study there is to say, then how do we apply that at scale? How do we apply that across the campus? How do we apply that across the district? Those are the conversations that are starting to happen where I think the long-term value is with Compass.
Thank you.
I have one question, and it's, you said at one point that you've identified things that we still need to work on and some things that are kind of working, and everything you've said is so encouraging. I am just curious, what is it that you identify as something that needs to be improved?
Well, one of the areas that I think we all struggle to help students succeed in is the area of mathematics, and often a barrier to that A to G completion is mathematics. I mentioned the summer career academies. We are now working, we have one of our math faculty who will be meeting with faculty from a variety of local high schools, and I believe TAM's included, to develop a summer academy that is not a math academy, but it is a math academy. So we're going to have students actually through virtual reality, through construction, through machining parts for a project they might do, through all of those things, figuring out how to do those things. And in figuring it out, it will be based on math concepts that we know students need to know. But instead of trying to teach them the concept and having them apply it, they're going to go out and as a team figure out how to do this stuff. Then they're going to head back and say, well, how did you figure that out? Guess what? You applied these concepts. These are the concepts that will work for you in the next year and the next year in your math development. We're piloting that because we feel like that might be a good way to get students engaged in potential higher education and at the same time address some of those areas where a B student in the freshman year becomes a C student, in the junior year becomes a D student who says, I don't have to take any more math, I'm not going to. Then they don't take math, and they come to us, and then we're struggling to help them be successful with the college level math requirement. That's one example of something we're trying. We also know that we have some additional faculty who are actually doing focus groups with Compass students starting in the next few weeks to talk about where they are at different points. So we've made assumptions as we've gone along about what's appropriate for 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. We've done that in conjunction. But we want to figure out better about how we help students make meaning of what they're doing as they go through it, right? I mean, if you're anything like me, it wasn't until after you graduated from college you said, oh, that's why I had general education requirements, and that's why, this now makes sense, and it didn't at the time. I think with these students in particular, we really want to make sure that they have an opportunity to make meaning of it as they go, to build that self-efficacy as they go. And I think that will happen through further program development. Now that may be specific activities, it may be counseling them into certain college level courses, it may be other things along the way, but we're still working on that exact right mix for those middle years of 10th, 11th, 12th. The career academies are a big piece. but summer doesn't cut it. We need to make sure that's year-round, and we've found some great things to do around that. We're partnering with 10,000 Degrees around FAFSA completion, and we're going to be at San Rafael High School. We now are getting all juniors to complete the CCC Apply as practice, so that when college applications come around, they will have been through it once. We also then will have an easy way to get them engaged in other coursework. So there are a variety of things we're building onto the program, some of which are campus specific and some of which are just good practice we probably should be doing with our partners across the county anywhere.
I'm just going to ask a quick question to follow up. You mentioned that you're working with 10,000 Degrees. Bridge the Gap has a pretty significant presence at Tam High School as well.
Yes.
How are you coordinating? Because I'm guessing there's...
We are coordinated. Do you have anything you want to mention about the connection with Bridge the Gap at Tam with Compass?
Yes, definitely. So at Tam High School specifically, there's something called Success Network. It's essentially a consortium of Tam High staff, counselors, admin, as well as CBO partners, and come together, pool our resources, and essentially bring our student lists and figure out how to best support students and their unique needs. So Bridge the Gap is one of the, I'd say it's the largest tutoring support at Tamalpais High School, and me as the campus coordinator there, I have strong collaboration with them, and I often send students to them. We have constant communication on what students are struggling in, what classes they need extra support. So that's an ongoing discussion.
Great. Good, thanks.
So I had two questions. One was just, can you only enter Compass in the 9th grade? And that's how you go through it? Or like for me, I'm a high school student who takes comm classes. So if I could if I can enter Compass like my senior year or something.
So we start the cohort of the students. We actually work at most schools. It works a little bit differently at each school, but at most schools we rely on the counselors at the high school with the feeder middle schools to identify students coming out of 8th grade into the program. And it is that 4-year program. Now, I'm glad you're taking College of Marin classes. I hope they're going well. If not, let me know and we'll help you out. But yeah, it's designed that way, and it's designed that way for a reason, because there are elements all the way along. Now, this is our issue in bringing it to scale. We have lots of students who would love to have this type of experience. And so we've been focused on the students that we truly believe need it the most. These are the students that we know demographically and through the numbers that if we don't have an intervention like this, the likelihood of them going to college is much less, and the likelihood of them succeeding if they do go to college is much, much less. And the A to G numbers I mentioned in terms of the Bay Area counties, I mean, that's an indication of that. So it is a 4-year program. In fact, students, their parents, the principal, and our president all sign a contract at the start. It says everyone's got a certain role and we're going to do these things. And if everyone does all that stuff at the end, you get to come to College of Marin for free. That's our California Promise program. Now, what I would say is that just because we don't have Compass at every school, we don't have enough seats for everyone in Compass, that doesn't mean that our outreach folks, so Anna Pillaton, our Director of School and Community Partnerships, Julian Solis, who's our outreach coordinator, aren't working with folks at every school to create opportunities for students to get engaged with College of Marin content on an ongoing basis and make sure that's the right stuff and working to remove those barriers. If we have an opportunity, and if it would be helpful to talk about expansion, we can have those conversations. We've now invested we've reinvested resources to make sure Compass is sustainable. We initially had a small grant of $50,000 from the Marin Community Foundation to help us out. We've leveraged some other funds. We've now built that into our base budget. But those dollars are to support what we're doing right now with cohorts in the high schools that are on the back. To do more than that, we have to get creative and figure out other ways to do that. And that may come from a variety of ways moving forward, which doesn't help you right now, but is our goal ultimately, is to say we're going to take what works and we're going to apply it even more broadly across the county.
Another question is just, have you ever thought of outreaching to more of the continuation schools, like Madrone County or Oracle?
Yeah, in fact, we have a lot of students from those schools, and we've been offering some satellite courses at some of them. Some counseling courses. I know we're also going to be offering a hospitality course and a couple of others at some of the continuation schools this spring. But we can certainly do more of that, and are always looking for the right conversations to have about what really fits the needs of that particular school. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask, you have a question?
I would just add, as I'm the TAM representative, and I have never worked closely with Compass, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know at least last year our Link Crew program, which works with freshmen, had designated Link leaders met with Compass, and as a leadership representative, we worked with those Link leaders to make sure that these students had knew about leadership things. I believe, if I'm correct, Jade actually was our freshman class president her freshman year, and that it's been working well. I see the sweatshirts all the time. They're fun.
That's great.
Bridge the gap, and I always see that it's always packed after school. That it definitely, from a student who does not know much about the program, it seems successful from a far view.
Great, thank you.
So I will ask if there's any public comment on the MOU before I ask the board if anyone has any questions specific about the MOU. No? Do we have any public comment on this item? We're here to approve the MOU between the district and College of Marin. Okay, in that case, can I ask for a motion to approve the renewal of the College of Marin Compass Program MOU?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passed. Thank you again. That was very interesting. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. And thank you for all your work. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 12B, review English language learner report. And I believe that's Kim Stifler.
Yep.
Get my... Oh, why is this doing this?
Hi, how's everyone
Hi.
doing?
Great, thanks.
Good. This is my lead team. Just wanted to introduce Debbie McCrae. She's the EL coordinator at Redwood. This is Lorraine Ortega. She's the EL coordinator at Drake. And this is Nikki Pelletier, and she is the EL coordinator at TAM. And she might have a babysitter issue and need to run. So if all of a sudden you see her that she's not here, it's because of her cute small child. So I'm just going to give you an overview of our program. We do this on an annual basis. We show you quantitative data tracking our student progress around both English proficiency and academics. And I think the best part of the show is to tell you about our program and how we're approaching support, and then really hear from the front lines about how we're approaching our EL programs at each one of the sites. Just wanted to start with just defining English learner. So an English learner is a student who speaks another language besides English, yet has to demonstrate full proficiency in English on local measures of English proficiency. Students are classified as, quote, EL, are as diverse and different from one another as they are any students in your classroom. And they come to us with a wide range of home languages, cultures, and proficiency levels in English. And so as you'll see, they are an amazing group. They're also super unique. They come with a wide range of primary languages. They come with a wide range of English proficiencies. And this team behind me does an amazing job of helping them approach learning in our district. Just wanted to re-anchor in some laws and guidelines. There's federal law that we are required to serve all students, including English learners. Our jobs are to teach them how to read, write, listen, speak in English, and we also have to teach them how to access their academic content in English. So it's sort of it's a tough one, right? To teach them the English language while teaching them and providing them access points into the academic language and content at the same time. So it's both an art and a science. We're federally and legally obligated to do this. Our goal is to reach the same outcomes for all kids. We're not quite there yet, as you'll see, and that we're supposed to avoid unnecessary segregation, which means for the most part our students are mainstreamed into our classes except for a couple different elements which we'll describe to you. We're also required to provide professional development to staff. These are, again, goals set out by the state of California, ensure that they are receiving proficiency in the English language as rapidly as possible, and we assess and measure and teach for that. And then also assure within a reasonable amount of time that they're meeting the same grade level content standards. All of our work is of course anchored in our LCAP goals, and you can see clear connections here. Access to rigorous content, demonstrating progress towards proficiency, supporting their emotional and social growth, and involving community members. And our goals are aligned to that. A couple of recent shifts that you'll see appear in the data that you should know about. With the onset of the Common Core state standards, the English language development standards also shifted to align to Common Core. And so in addition, like we have the SBAC assessment that's new that replaced, it's not even new anymore, replaced the STAR. We have a new assessment for English language proficiency that each English learner takes on an annual basis, and it's called the LPAC, where it used to be the CELT. That's in its second year, so it's going to be harder for us to show you longitudinal data. There's different tests, different standards, different scales, so just be aware of that. In terms of our population and demographic trends, the number of students that we've had in our district, while very small relatively, have doubled over the past 6 years, so our population is increasing at a disproportionately faster rate. Our EL students in summer are disproportionately low socioeconomics. They again have a range of English proficiency levels and come with a wide range of primary languages. What you're seeing here on the right-hand side is just the percentage of our overall population that are designated as EL. So as you can see, it's quite small, but it has grown significantly over time. The last 2 years are interesting to note, as you'll see it dip back, but that's actually likely due to a higher level of what we call reclassification. And what that means is when students have reached a level of English proficiency where assessments say that they're proficient, then we say that they're not ELs anymore, but we still track and monitor their progress and support them. This is interesting to see just the range of languages we're supporting in our current population. Right now, the majority are Spanish speaking as their primary language, but we also have a huge range. And so that is amazing and adds such an asset to our classrooms and our spaces. And it requires significant differentiation approaches and access points into students' content in their native language, as well as helping them learn English.
May I ask a question with that? Does that, if a student comes to Redwood or TAM or Drake for a year, they're an exchange student, do they show up in that?
I don't think they do. Do you think exchange students show up in there?
Nope. No, because exchange students are required to be English proficient to come in.
So these are just data charts. I'm going to go through them rather quickly because I kind of gave you the synopsis. This chart just shows that we do have a huge disparity between socioeconomic status. ELs are disproportionately poorer as measured by whether or not they're qualifying for free and reduced lunch than the general population. The LPAC, again, is the annual assessment they take to measure their English proficiency. So this helps us understand the range of levels of English proficiency and also measure progress over time. Again, we only will have 2 years worth of data here. The levels are up above. That's sort of your key. Level 1 is the lowest level emerging. Level 4 is the upper bridging. Level 4, when they reach it, is considered proficient in English. And so this chart shows you that really they're kind of broken up into pretty comparable pockets, right? It's in quarters, essentially, as the level 1s, level 2s, level 3s, and level 4s. We sometimes call the level 1s and 2s more newcomers to the country that are going to need more support in learning English than the ones that are in the 3s and into the 4s. And then once they reach 4 level and meet some other criteria, we would then reclassify them as reclassified English proficient. Another way to track sort of our progress over time is to look at how well our students are progressing, and meaning, are they jumping at least one level within a year, let's say, or within a certain amount of time. And so if they were a level 1, did they move to a level 2? If they were a 2, did they move to a 3? So how well are we moving them along that continuum? Because we only have 2 years worth of data to share, the one data point we were able to pull is that 45% of the 47 students who were tested during those 2 years made progress on their overall score, so that our students are moving along the continuum and making progress in their proficiency. In terms of academics, again, you're going to see some pretty substantial gaps. However, there are some highlights to this. The standardized scores at the SBAC, they take the same test as everybody else. I just wanted to note in the upper right-hand corner, again, our population size is so small, it's called around 100, and the SBAC is only given to 11th grade students, so you're really looking at a very small N value. And so each year, those scores are going to fluctuate and dip the bars. So I find this hard to actually track and interpret trends over time. I just wanted to point that out. But what you are seeing is that our ELs are not doing as well on this standardized test as the general population. You're going to see the same trend in mathematics. And again, sort of the lower end values. The interesting part too, when you look at larger numbers of students getting reclassified, they then get pulled out of that EL data pool too. So sometimes when you see a larger number get reclassified, you're going to see that EL percentage dip. Grades, how many students received at least one D or F in their GPA that year over time. So again, you're going to see that our students are receiving more Ds and Fs than the general population. However, this is an interesting one that we took a look at all of our students that are categorized as English learners and looked at which ones are actually enrolled in our support program, either in a class called ELD, English Language Development, where they're learning English, or in an EL-specific academic workshop class, or both. And the students that are receiving our support services are doing better than the ELs who are not. And some of them, frankly, just opt out, or they're long-term English learners. So we see that as a highlight. And we also see this as a highlight with the reclassification. Reclassification is indicative of us doing our jobs and creating proficient English speakers. And we had a very high rate of reclassification last year, and reclassified another chunk of them this year, pretty high rate too. So we like to think of that as a success. Just going to move on into our overall support program. So this has evolved fairly substantially over the past 6-7 years, and the details are in your written report. But previously in the past maybe 6-7 years ago, we only had one program for English learners, and it was housed at Tam High. So we were shuttling all of the EL kids from Drake and from Redwood and from other areas over to Tam, so they were unable to really attend their home school. And then they were also more in these sheltered classes, which were separated and segregated from the general population, and a group of amazing, well-meaning, and awesome teachers working with them. But at a certain point in time, when our numbers went up, and we had families that wanted to stay at their home schools, we had staff that wanted to teach those students at their home schools, and we also knew we needed to desegregate and mainstream the students more. We really evolved this program over the last 3-4 years. So we have now an EL team where there was one leader before. At TAM we have 3, one at each of the comprehensives. We also have a wider team that I'll show you on the next slide that includes a big group. And our overall purpose is to meet to ensure equal outcomes, equitable opportunities for English learners. here's our big team. So it literally went from kind of like 1 to 21 or so. So my 3 coordinators are behind me. You also have 1 site admin designated from each school site. We have ELDs, English Language Development teachers at every school site teaching specifically language at least multiple levels. We also have now designated academic workshops for English learners at each of the schools. We opened that up this year at Drake for the first time. And we also have the amazing addition this year of having math and science support at each one of the schools. So that's a bit of a shift. We have paraeducators that are designated at each one of the schools, and we also have designated counselors. So it's a very comprehensive team. And this team behind me, we meet once every 2 to 3 weeks, and then this team meets maybe every 6 weeks, and then they also meet in their site teams. This is pretty much exactly what I just said. We also do provide ongoing professional development for teachers. We're helping teachers to scaffold. We're providing examples. We're doing observations. We're providing workshops. We're just teaching strategies and modeling that. These amazing people are. Additional student support comes in the form of individual learning plans. So how does this student learn best? What is it that you should do to accommodate for them? They're training staff on how to accommodate for each student. They're also clustering certain students in groups and then working with a smaller group of teachers. They have peer tutors that are pushing in. We're doing translations, access to core content in home languages. We have online courses and resources we're using. They're also doing an amazing job of community building, field trips, bringing families in, positive culture and relationships, and just really making sure that they're safe and they're accessing, whether it's sports or dances or colleges or what have you. And I'm going to shift now to my team. They're going to kind of tell you more on the ground level what they're working on and what they're doing with so yeah, Tam's going to go first. Nikki's going to go first.
Definitely need to do that. Okay, so in the board report, I included some points, some highlights about our program, but I just kind of want to talk about some of the successes that we've had with our program at TAM, because we've had a lot of support from the administration with regards to building equity into the master schedule for these kids. They had priority when it came to building the master schedule, and also with staffing as well. The administration has been supportive about the choices of who would teach the classes, who would teach the language class, and who would do the AW classes. And the other thing that I'm proud about is the community building that we've had. Our previous EL coordinator, Mike Levinson, continues to have the what am I thinking of? The tutorial class for the older kids. And then the current ELD teacher, Ted Joseph, has the younger 9th and 10th graders in his tutorial. So he continues to have a relationship with those students. And he helps in organizing the field trips. And if you see up here, we have field trips to Chrissy Field and the Academy of Sciences. The Chrissy Field field trip was actually really fun. It was a barbecue with all the kids to celebrate the spring. And it was really actually nice because the kids all pitched in to help cook and clean up, and it was a fun day. So those are my highlights.
Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. I'm Lorraine Ortega. I'm at Drake High School, and I'm the coordinator. I also run the ELD class. And I'll just start with the pictures. You're seeing a couple of field trips from last year. Went to the California Academy of Sciences, but we went to the observation deck of the the museum, what is it called? Is it the Ed Young?
DeYoung.
Yeah. I always do that. Okay. DeYoung Museum. And then on the other side, similar to TAM, we did a very end of the year celebration just to get the kids outside. And you guys did a fantastic job this year. And they played, we picnicked. We went to Fisherman's Wharf. They were really excited to go to Fisherman's Wharf. So we walked all the way up there. It was fun. And then down below the picture is the ELAW class, and our science teacher who runs that class, Sue Fox, she was exploding pumpkins just last week, and so all of the kids were recording her with their phones. But they were super excited. They had been begging her to do that all school year, and she had said, okay, we'll just wait. When we get to Halloween, we'll do it. And so she did a science experiment with them, and then the culminating finale was exploding pumpkins. So to our highlights at Drake, one of the big things that I'm really proud of in terms of our team in general is how, and Nikki also referenced this, but how supportive our administrators are of making sure that the master's schedule does work for our students. And so besides the fact that we have an ELAW class that runs at the time of the day when it does, but also the fact that I can be available at different times of the day to help support our paraeducator, so that she can bring students in instead of having to work in the classroom. Sometimes that's really difficult if the class is crowded. Like for example, in math, if it's a big class, she can pull a small group of students over to my classroom because I have room for her to come and do that small group pull out. The other thing is, in terms of our EL students who have been reclassified, or RFEP'd as the acronym goes, we do our best to continue to provide them support by pulling them into AVID or recommending them to 10,000 Degrees. Those are our other support services to make sure that the students are accessing tutoring support as well as support to get into college. And with that, I'm seeing tremendous growth from the students that are doing that. It's boosting their self-confidence in ways that they previously they weren't feeling good about being in school. And to speak to that really quickly, you guys were seeing the D's and F's up there. One of the things that is really important about learning a second language, and it's based on Jim Cummins' research, is that it takes at least 5 to 7 years to develop academic language, or what's considered Tier 2 vocabulary. It's those words that we use in multiple settings but are more advanced than conversational English, for example. So conversational English takes about 1 to 2 years for students to start to speak, and then the academic language takes about 5 to 7 years. And if we're getting a kid as a freshman, we might not see them progress far enough in their English proficiency, even though they might transition out of the ELD class. And so one of the things that I have a hard time with is that we have a lot of gaps in our ELD program here in the district in general, and especially when it comes to teachers, our gen ed teachers who are trained to scaffold our EL learners. And this is something that is going to come up later in the recommendations, but I think it's super, super critical. We don't have, we're not sending teachers for PD. So the coordinators right now, we're responsible for training teachers, but we don't have a lot of time during the school year to do that. Yet we don't necessarily also have the ability to send them out to training. And that's super, super critical. If we don't have that training for our gen ed teachers, it's really hard to ask them to support our EL students in the gen ed classroom. And they might not be aware of culturally relevant teaching practices that'll also help our students access content that, to be fair, and I've worked in other districts throughout, not just this state, or at least in Marin County, but I've worked in other states as well. And this district has collegiate level content that they're teaching to high school students. And when we have EL students who are coming into a classroom and they're trying to learn the language and the teacher's having a hard time scaffolding because maybe they haven't been trained or maybe they haven't had to work with students who are coming with this kind of background, it really makes it that much more difficult for our EL students to be as successful as they can be. So I'm saying that kind of as a little bit of a tangent, but I think it goes to, it speaks to the amount of work that we're doing as an EL team to make sure that our students are as successful as possible and that they're graduating, if not with their A to G requirements, which I think is critical, but with at least the TAM district requirements, then I think it's a huge, huge, huge accomplishment and celebration. So one of the things, coming back to Drake specifically, one of the things that I think is really good that we're doing is we have developed a stronger community because we have a Spanish for Spanish speakers class. So one way, it might sound silly, but putting Spanish speakers who are coming from countries in Central and South America, so they're perfectly fluent, obviously, in Spanish, but a lot of them don't come with formal schooling. And so they're put in a Spanish for Spanish speakers class, and they're getting to develop their literacy skills in their native language with a phenomenal Spanish teacher, Jose Anchordoki. And not only that, but it gives them a community outside of the ELD classroom because they're with students that are from the broader high school community, and they make friends quicker, they feel at home, and they feel like they have this other separate safe space besides the ELD classroom, and it's a huge help. And so I think if we could put Spanish for Spanish speakers in all the high schools, I think that would be a tremendous, just accomplishment for the high schools, because then it would translate those successes over there. Sorry. Okay.
I'm Debbie McCrae. I teach ELD 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 different classes, and the academic workshop, and I'm the coordinator. And I also teach Spanish. But okay. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues have already said. We have a lot in common at the 3 sites. We also have enjoyed wonderful field trips. We just went to Mirror Woods and Mirror Beach on October 15th. A lot of the kids they didn't know that that the beach was right there in the forest. So they made new friends, and it was a great day. We also had a nice graduation party there for our seniors who graduated. A lot of our students, they find the ELD program is their home when they're in high school. They have in common that they're all learning English. So they really bond. We have a lot of non-EL students who are peer tutors. So they actually volunteer an entire period of their day to explain the homework and teach students. It's really one of the most amazing experiences our high school students can have. They've actually told me that. Their parents have told me that. It's like the best thing they did in high school was being a peer tutor. They make a huge difference. And one thing I'm really proud of this year is we have about a dozen or maybe 15 peer tutors. 2 of them are actually EL students who are a little more advanced. And it's really nice to see the kids who are learning empowered to be in that position. One is our homeroom rep. So we have every week homeroom announcements. So we have a student who was an EL who actually reads the announcements. And it's great because, her English isn't perfect, but the other kids hear her and see her, and it's a good community that we have. Our paraeducator, Senia Rodriguez, she is priceless, and she's a Redwood grad, and she's a former EL. She came from El Salvador at the age of 11, and she's a College of Marin student. So things like this really show the power of our community. if that's what makes students come to school every day, you know, and take risks. It's so hard to integrate into an American high school if you don't speak English. They were all going to go to homecoming. This is a great story. So, but what happened?
It was canceled.
It was canceled the same afternoon, right? So we had them all had signed up to go. Many went to prom in the spring. The administration has been, and also the classified staff have just been so supportive in making sure that our students have these opportunities. Winter sports are starting. We have a group going out for cheer this week, soccer, basketball. That, you know, these students who just move here can get involved in a sport, it really changes their life. So it's something that our team does and is really help them, encourage them. Because there are a lot of systematic barriers that might not seem visible to, you know, most people, but these students struggle just with kind of like normal activities. So we think it's really success for us when they're learning English, when they're passing their classes, when they're, you know, becoming reclassified as fully English proficient. That, for us, we have a big celebration. It's really an accomplishment. If any of you have studied a different language, you know how hard that is. Imagine going to school in that language. And so for them to get to that level, it's really amazing. And a lot of the teachers at Redwood are so supportive. We cluster them in groups, and that's been very effective. And yes, so we're learning a lot, and we're working hard, and the kids are also, they are really, I think they're doing really well. And I love working with them, so thank you for supporting our program. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I just can't thank Lorraine and Debbie and Nikki enough for all the hard work that they do. So our reflection in general is we still have work to do, and we're making progress, and we evolve and deepen our work every year, and we really want to stay the course, and we thank you so much for supporting us, given the context of what's going on with us financially and all that. It's really, really important, and this is really anchored in our equity values, and we really appreciate it. We also want to continue to provide professional development and training to staff, as Lorraine mentioned, and we want to just basically stay the course and ask for your continued support. So we're here to answer any questions or no, or...
Thank you very much. I'll open it up. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi. So all of you said, I think that one of the supports is that the admins make the schedules work for you, and particularly one saying the academic workshop when it's scheduled. So I'm just curious, just briefly, how. I mean, so is the academic workshop scheduled so that all EL students are in it, or how is that working?
It's different at every site. I mean, at Redwood, we have 2 academic workshops at the same time. One is a math focus and
Okay.
one is general ed. And so the students are able to move back and forth.
Okay.
That was prioritized in the schedule, and that math teacher is also the math teacher of the students who are in our pre-algebra course that we call Foundation. So they're with her twice a day, and yeah, so that's basically was done kind of first, if you will, or prioritized. Yes.
I have a general question. I've always wondered this. You had a slide where you had at least a dozen languages, I think, and I can't remember the term you used, but it had to do with I want to say anchoring or finding the pieces of their home language. I can't even repeat what you said. So I find that fascinating because clearly I can't imagine that all of you can speak all these languages. So is it a linguistics background that you have to do this, or how do you do it? I just find it fascinating. Like, just pick one of these languages other than Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make it comprehensible to students. So the way you scaffold it, like a typical lesson, you might start with some vocabulary development, key vocabulary, and then you might do a short reading with those words integrated, and then you might have some comprehension questions, and then a conversation, and then like a culminating activity where they, so
but it has to be done in such a way that it's lined up so the students are making sense of it. We often use videos as well.
Oh, okay.
So we don't like teach grammar per
So
se. It's more contextualized.
Mhm.
We try to make it interesting and relevant, related to their lives, related to other classes. The way I teach ELD often, it's, oh, you're going to learn about photosynthesis and science this week. So we're reading about it. And you're learning all these great vocabulary. So then when you go to that
Oh, I
class,
see.
you know
Okay.
what's going on.
No, thank you. No, that's helpful, because that's, hearing you say, too, that you're not focused just on the grammar, now I can completely see how that would work.
Yeah, it's
Thank
more
you.
skills-based, like reading, writing, and it's
Mhm.
deciphering, and it's also confidence.
Mhm.
A lot of my students tell me they don't speak in any of their classes, really. It's kind of unfortunate, but I think, you know, it's understandable too. But in
Mhm.
my class, they speak.
Mhm.
So that's where they try out their presenting. So
Mhm.
then when they go to the social issues class and they have to present
Right.
a drug, they're like, okay.
Thank you.
There's a nice increase in terms of the reclassification last year relative to prior years. Is there anything different in terms of what you've been doing just in the past couple of years? Or is that so the mix of those who arrived in 1 through 4? And is it a mix issue with that or just something different?
Well, I think it's different at the different schools, at least at Drake. Our program is only a couple of years old, and so part of it was identifying a bunch of students actually, and when I say a bunch, I mean we don't have that many, you know, we have like 13 kids that I tested last year. And so identifying the kids that, wait a minute, they're classified as an EL student and yet they're actually having a lot of success and they're not in the ELD class. Let's look and see what's going on here. And we were able to reclassify quite a few that way. And now that we've reclassified some of the students that have kind of been sitting in this EL category for maybe since middle school, now we get to concentrate more on the students who are currently under that EL cap or umbrella and pay attention to where their scores are sitting with the LPAC and their grades. But I know at Drake, at Redwood,
Yeah, we have specific criteria we use for reclassification. When they brought on the LPAC, they put a stronger emphasis on that level 4 for English proficiency. And then while we consider grades, before it was more of a barrier, and now it's more something we look at holistically. So we're able to sort of reclassify easier based on a standardization, not on be held back by these D's and F's too.
Any other questions before I ask if there's public comment on this item or this information? Okay. No student trustees? Any public comment on this topic? No. Well, thank you very much. That was very informative. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it. And I see it's study time, huh? Yeah. Well, good luck, everybody.
So, do they stay till like the 5th item, or is it a time?
Yeah, I haven't figured it out yet.
Great.
No, I wondered.
I know, they all get up at the same time, yeah. So the next item, because I see, Laura, you're here, and I have a hunch you might be here for the next item. At the beginning of the meeting, there's a request to table this item because of staff illness. And so, unfortunately, we're tabling the item 12C, report on youth vaping prevention, to the November 19th meeting. I was assuming that's, yeah.
But you can stay.
But so next up, because of that, is now item 12D, local control accountability plan, local indicators discussion with superintendent.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So we're going to go through the local indicators of our local control and accountability plan tonight. Just as a reminder, we saw these in June, and because we do a lot of the data that we collect is in the California Healthy Kids and the Parent Survey, we don't have new data at this point, but we will at this time next year as far as that a lot of that data goes. So You can see the local indicators are here on the right, the basic conditions, implementation of academic standards, parent engagement, and school climate. So these are self-reporting, and as you can see, met, not met, and not met for 2 years. The CDE released a preview of the local indicators to the entire, those of us in LCAP coordinator positions yesterday, and in true CDE fashion, when we all logged on, every one of us had not met for every single one of our indicators across the entire state. So it was an interesting follow-up email from CDE explaining that it had been a glitch in the system, and in fact, not every district in the state had not met any local indicators. So just a reminder, these are our 4 LCAP goals, and some of our local indicators are sort of woven throughout our goals. Number 1 is basic condition, and this is something that it's self-reported, but we report to the county and to the state, all of our credentialed teachers, and if they are or are not teaching within their credentialed area. And then students' access to curriculum aligned to instructional materials, and then safe, clean, and functioning schools. So some of the evaluation on basic conditions. This year when we went through, there was 1 English instructor who was teaching a social studies class at Drake, so we only had 1 really teaching outside of their credentialed area. One of the measures we use to say that they have access to proper instructional materials is our Williams complaints. We have not received any Williams complaints. Further, we maintain a 5-year curriculum cycle with all of our departments. We have a curriculum council that meets once a month that reviews instructional materials as well as courses of study to ensure alignment to California adopted standards. Currently, right now, our science department is piloting some next generation science standards aligned textbooks for all 3 of the new courses. And as far as safe, clean, and functional facilities, we have added some portables, both at TAM and Redwood to accommodate growth. Particularly at Redwood, we also added an extra restroom to make sure that we are in compliance with state standards around that. So local indicator self-evaluation for implementation of academic standards. The main way we maintain close sort of alignment is that we have a series, we have curriculum council that has representatives from each of the departments as well as administrators, certificate administrators on that. And then we also have a series of task forces that work collaboratively. We have a math and English language arts task force. The work of those 2 task forces this year is to work on consistency of implementation of curriculum. So that's both what we are teaching and to what depth of knowledge we are teaching it is the focus of that work. We have a science task force that has done a lot of the heavy lifting. They have written the new courses under the next generation science standards. This year we have a writing team for chemistry, and they are actually in the throes of writing that course right now. Physics and the Universe and the Living Earth have been launched. Both of those classes are now up and running. And the Social Studies Task Force has been working on what are known as the Big 6 historical thinking skills. The social studies framework that came out from the state in the last few years did not change the learning outcomes. So they're not different, but they really talked about aligning methodology and bringing these big thinking skills into alignment with curriculum. So that was it's a little bit different from like the Common Core adoption or the Next Gen, where it wasn't necessarily the standards, but skills and then how we teach them. And as you just heard, the English language learner team, as we also have new English language learner outcomes from the state. The third local indicator is parent engagement, and we have some board members on our local control and accountability plan team. And we recently had a pretty, what I thought, hearty conversation around parent engagement. These are some of the responses we got from that committee on ways that parents can engage within the community. And then we also have these are key findings from the California Parent Survey, which is the sort of companion to the California Healthy Kids. This is the data that you've already seen. It's not new, but it is what we use, and we will be gathering more of that in the spring. And this has like a third of our parents respond to this survey.
Do you know if it's equal across the schools approximately?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I looked at it, this
aggregate.
was from the aggregate. And then we also have our local LCAP survey, which this year we will be administering in January. So we did also capture some areas of growth for parent engagement, again, from our LCAP committee, that we will be implementing into our new LCAP plan. So we'll be looking at ways of engaging parents with these as action steps, or some of these as action steps. And then school climate. School climate is measured in a variety of ways, including suspension and expulsion rates, as well as chronic absenteeism. We get our chronic absenteeism rates, but the state does not put it out on the dashboard for high schools. That is largely because high schools capture attendance differently than K-8s. We don't usually have day attendance, we have period attendance, and so there's been some trouble with how do we translate those into one system. So we don't get on our dashboard our chronic absenteeism rate. But we do have some school climate data. Again, this is not new. And this top one here, the 62% and 74% agreed that there was at least one caring adult at school, is one of the metrics that we as a leadership team are really focusing on this year. As we know from research, that having at least one caring adult on school has a big impact on student learning, because it has an impact on student attendance and an impact on how well a student feels connected to that school. So one way we know that it sort of feels like low-hanging fruit is that we can focus on making sure that we're building strong relationships with every single student, and the students aren't falling through the cracks, so that we know if they're not there, we can follow up and make sure that kids are at school so that they can learn at high levels. Again, we saw this data fairly recently when I did the student achievement report, feeling safe at school. This was an area of growth for us, particularly for our African American population who feels less safe the longer they're here. Again, some of the reasons for harassment, particularly around ethnicity and race, we have a lot of work going on all of our campuses through our SOAR program, and that all of our campuses are sort of integrating our student leadership programs more. So we don't have leadership and SOAR, and they're really integrating all of these programs so that the students are working together. And then the alcohol and drug use. As we know, our wellness programs, we have this year launched a more aggressive TUPE campaign, which is tobacco use prevention education. We have cadres of students that have been trained in TUPE education, and they are going into classrooms at all of the sites and speaking to their peers. We also have poster campaigns going on. We have groups at each of the sites working on cessation programs and sort of diversion programs for students. And of course, social emotional well-being. You know, not only do we have our wellness programs, but part of that, making sure every student has one caring adult on campus so that we can know if a student isn't doing well. So those are our local indicators. There's no action the board needs to take, they just need to be presented. So if you have any questions.
I have a question on the chronic absenteeism, which I know was not included in the well, it's not included in the state dashboard,
Right.
but do we have targets for chronic absenteeism? And I ask because at Alameda we just discussed this about what the district's targeting and what the high school's trying to target.
Yeah, so we, yes, we are trying to reduce it, obviously, but, and I don't know exactly what that percentage we were trying to reduce it by, but we, last year, implemented a new process that admin would go through. We did update our attendance policies as well and put in place an intervention plan so that if a student hit a certain number of absences, and I believe it is 9 in a semester in any one class, that student would be called in with their parents. There would be a conversation with admin and a attendance support plan put in place in collaboration with the parents. So that's one of the things that we're working on at varying levels of success. It's time consuming, but we feel that part of the problem that we've done through our research is that sometimes when you reach out to parents and say, hey, Mrs. Topier, this is Tara's 7th absence in this class. Mrs. Topier says, oh, no, it's not. No, that can't be right. I've only excused her 1 or 2 times. And sometimes you'll say, no, there's 7 excused absences already this semester. And what we find is that it's the reminders to parents, because parents don't necessarily track over the course of several months or weeks. If it's 1 here and 1 there, it doesn't start to register. So the importance of making sure that parents have access to that data and that we are sending out information as well.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Oh, we do have a public commenter. Can you please identify yourself?
I can. Do you need my yellow card?
I'll take it.
I actually.
All right, the clock.
Oh, yeah, 3-minute clock, please.
Started. Mary, okay. My name's Laura Anderson, and I'm here tonight to thank you, everyone who's here. Having sat in your position, I know that often we focus more on the challenges in the district than all the good that's happening. So I'm here to be your day brightener or evening brightener. As an engaged citizen, I thank you for recognizing that these LCAP goals, especially LCAP goal number 4, student wellness, is a community concern. It's not just for those who have students in the district, it's for the community at large. As a parent of 3 Redwood grads, thank you for focusing on the social and emotional and physical health of all of your students. As time goes on, those things, that LCAP goal number 4, become even more important, I think, than the academic success that all of our students are striving for. As a former trustee in this district, thank you for building on all of the good work achieved in the district to date and for leading by example. And finally, as a newly appointed co-chair of the Marin Healthy Youth Partnerships, thank you for your ongoing strong support of our joint effort to educate the community at large on the importance of healthy students. So thank you all very much. And I've got 1:20 left.
You can keep going. You have a minute more. You could keep thanking us.
Tell us more.
Yeah, please go. Thank you. That was very nice. Appreciate that. Okay. I think that's it. So now we'll move on to item 12E. This is not an action item. This is a time for discussion. Review of draft resolution 19-6 for potential parcel tax ballot measure on the March 3rd, 2020 ballot. Thank you.
So as we have been talking for several months now, we are coming closer to the deadline to when the board would have to make a decision on a resolution to place a measure on the March 3rd, 2020 ballot. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to review a draft resolution and discuss it tonight prior to needing to make a decision. So we have William Tunick here tonight to provide any clarifications or answer any questions that you might have.
Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. William Tunick with Dennis Waller Kelly. Actually, talked to you before. I think I was here probably about a little less than 2 years ago, Measure J, and talked to the board about the measure at that time. I know we've got some new board members. So wanted to quickly walk over the resolution. If there's any questions, answer those. Also take just a couple minutes at the beginning, as the board president mentioned before, just as far as to kind of add some more clarity around the tax structure issue. I know there's been some questions about that. And just by way of background, so where this all started was there was a 2013 case called Barricas versus Alameda Unified School District. Ironically, a parcel tax that was actually passed in 2008, took until 2013 to finally reach resolution. Before that, there really hadn't been anything about these, and that the Court of Appeal, actually out of San Francisco, raised a lot of questions about what school districts could do with parcel taxes as far as the structure of those taxes. So definitely when the board was looking at this in 2018, there were a lot of questions at that time, so Measure J time. Since that time, we've actually gotten a little bit of clarity, not as much as I think a lot of districts would like, but more than we had at 2018. There was a case out of Los Angeles that involved a park district tax, where the court went a little bit further. It talked about square footage taxes and actually upheld them, at least for the park district down there. And then the legislature acted last year to actually amend the statute that applies to school districts in a way that suggested clarified some of the other questions as far as if you have an improved parcel tax, what do you do with unimproved parcels? Because that was always a question as well. So I think we do have more clarity. Unfortunately, we don't have complete clarity because we don't have a case involving school districts and the statute that applies to school districts. We also don't have a case that talks about practically how you, or the legality, I would say, of taxes that have a maximum cap of a tax, which for a lot of square footage taxes becomes an issue. So there is definitely still less than ideal clarity around those two things, and I think at the end of the day, it's as much, from when I talk to districts about it, as much a risk about being in litigation and losing the tax as the risk of litigation in the first place. As I mentioned, from a timing perspective, Barricas took almost 5 years to resolve. It's one thing, I think, if you look at districts, actually I noticed this morning that I think Piedmont just yesterday passed a square footage tax. They actually had two on the ballot. They had one that was a per parcel and one that was a per square footage. I think the per square footage was essentially a supplemental. And so to the extent you're looking at it from a risk perspective, when you're doing a supplemental, that's a little bit different. Alameda, the last time they went through this process, same thing. They actually went, I think, 2.5 years early. So when they got challenged on that one, which did happen, the judicial process was able to finish before the tax actually went into effect. So there's ways of mitigating that risk, but it's difficult when you're looking at a renewal of your full tax and looking at the risk of litigation against that. And as the board president mentioned, I think in Barricas, the district got in the position of collecting the tax, but also not being able to spend it at the same time, which is also not an ideal position to be in. So a long way, short version of that is essentially it's clearer than it was in 2018. I think that's definitely true, but we can't say at this point that there's clearly no risk of someone bringing litigation over a square footage tax. So with that long explanation, I hope that was at least a little bit helpful. I want to turn to the resolution that you have before you tonight. And just kind of as the anatomy of the resolution, what it is, and it's similar to bond resolutions, is there's the resolution calling the election. And so what that does is it provides essentially direction to the district, county officials as to actually hold the election, what goes on the ballot, that type of thing. And what I want to actually do is, if we can skip to page 6, where it's Exhibit A. Sorry. Didn't give you a fair warning, we were going to jump 6 pages. So page 6, Exhibit A, this is the ballot label. So this is the 75-word summary of the measure that is actually on the ballot when voters go, well, they don't go into the voting booth anymore, but if they were to, when they look at their absentee ballot, their mail-in ballot, this is what's next to the yes or no. And so by law, this has to include the rate of the tax, the estimated annual amount that will be generated, and the length of the tax. And then it also has additional information about the purposes of the tax, references the exemptions, cost of living adjustment, oversight, all of those types of things, kind of the high-level things. Unfortunately, you only get 75 words. There's no way you're going to get everything into that on the ballot, but this is as good as you're going to do. So that's what the voters will actually see next to yes or no. When we go to the next page, which is Exhibit B, this is the full ballot text. So this is the actual measure that is being adopted by the voters. This goes in the voter information pamphlet. Again, you have a little bit at the beginning here that talks about sort of the background of the tax, the history of parcel taxes in the district, and sort of the purpose of this tax. At the bottom of that page is, again, that 75-word measure repeated, just to make it clear that we're talking about the same thing. On the next page, where we start to get into some of the meat of the measure, that subdivision A, this tells very clearly when does the measure begin, how much is it, what the cost of living increase will be, when does that begin, as well as, again, the annual amount. One thing I wanted to mention here, too, that last sentence there under A talks about what happens to your current measures. If this measure passes, this essentially supersedes those measures if this one goes into effect. They wouldn't be on top of each other, so that's clear in here. Then moving down, you have the exemptions. These are, so one interesting thing about for school districts, the statute says you can have exactly 3 exemptions, and you can't have any more. So a school district can't decide we want to have exempt other folks from the tax. These are the 3 categories you can have. These are the same that you have in Measure J right now. They would continue into this. As a matter of fact, the language of this measure indicates that those who already have exemptions under Measure J, or under your 2 existing measures, those would automatically continue under this measure. They wouldn't have to reapply. For folks that become eligible once this tax is in effect, it's a one-time application. They don't have to annually reapply for that exemption. And then moving down onto the bottom of the next page, I'm just kind of hitting the highlights. If there's anything I'm skipping, please let me know, and I'm happy to go back. Under E3, that's the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, which I know you're going to hear about a little bit more tonight. This, again, like Measure J, requires an oversight committee. It allows it to either be a separate committee or to continue the Measure J committee if that's what the board decides to do. And then actually the top of the next page is a similar provision. This deals with the annual plan, which is also a characteristic of Measure J. This would continue that in this measure as well. And then I think that's essentially, there's an Exhibit C at the end, but that's for the county superintendent to use, so I don't know if we need to cover that too much. So if there's any questions though about the resolution. So ultimately, the mechanics of this would be that when this came back to the board for approval, the board approves it. It asks the county superintendent to officially call the election. The county board of supervisors then consolidates it to go onto the ballot next March, and you'd be off from there.
Thank you for that explanation. And so regarding the ballot language, so Exhibit A, so we're limited to 75 words, and I just want to get your take on, is this generic language? Was this constructed specifically for the TAM district? Are people really worried about the state taking money, right? Because I see, there's 6 words we're wasting right there, or 7 words. So I just,
yeah,
a little bit.
Well, so I can maybe say something, and I might also defer to Sabrina as well. We look at it from a legal perspective, so that's where some of this language is required, but I think it was developed, or I know it was developed, coordination with your consultants based on, I believe, polling data and that type of thing. And if I get this wrong, you can kick me, but I believe that information is something that actually seems to resonate with a lot of voters, even though I think maybe folks who live in the school district world are more familiar with it.
And I'll ask.
Do you have anything you want to add, Sabrina?
No, you got it totally right. So that's based on, we worked with the district to develop the 75-word ballot questions. Yeah. That's what we put in the poll. That was supported by the poll, that is aligned with voter priorities. So state taking funding away, that is something that voters care about. They like to know that it's locally controlled and stays right here in your district. So this was developed for you. Great.
Any other questions from other board members? Just want to give you a chance just in case before you.
I had some minor, word changes, typos. For example, the "and" rating. Yeah. The district's financial management, third paragraph, from Exhibit B, that should be the AAA rating.
Okay, you got it auto-corrected?
Yeah.
So if you see any other typos, why don't you just email them? Yeah, but that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, why don't you stay in case we have to have more, we want more discussion. Do you need something over there, Mary, or can I move forward with public comment? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Mimi Willard from Kentfield. So there's been a discussion about risk, legal risk. There's multiple kinds of risks here that I think need to be weighed against each other. And those are the risk of $190 parcel tax failing and what that does to the district, the legal risk, which has been discussed and is out there, though it sounds as if it's not as big as might have been perceived. And I think the third risk is the risk to the people of the community who can't afford this. So I want to talk about those each within my remaining 2 minutes and 23 seconds. I urge you, you have your consultants here tonight. I have not heard the board ask the consultants in a public forum, would you advise us to go ahead with a $190 flat tax, given how this one is polling, and given what we have since learned subsequently regarding what else is going to be on that March ballot? I think that you've got, certainly on just the raw numbers, a 50% chance of failure. Arguably, that has gone up. And I think that perhaps the failure of Measure M in San Anselmo last night might have some relevance as well as far as taxpayer exhaustion. Secondly, I would say a flat parcel tax is not a victimless crime. Real people get hurt by loading more and more of these flat taxes onto people who live in single-family homes and that are effectively, to a large extent, voted on by other people who don't pay them. And what you have in front of you, I think some of you received a letter from a woman down in Mill Valley who has multiple sclerosis and is getting squeezed out of her 500 square foot home by layer upon layer of parcel taxes. Separately, I personally know someone to whom this happened in Kentfield when the parcel tax went from $1,200 to $1,600, a man whose woman had early Alzheimer's. There is a real thing that's going on here. I think that directors have a responsibility to provide both a quality education and to represent the broader community. I have not heard enough discussion here about the latter. So I hope that you will talk with your consultants about the 190 flat tax, consider your options and the whole picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, is she ready? Good evening.
Hello. I'm Benedetto Chico. I have again a child at Redwood, 10 years now almost in a row. First of all, I have to say thank you to Mr. Toupier for having accepted the job. I'm very happy after the nut case and the phony we had before. It's really fresh air to have somebody who cares for real about the students and the community, so thank you. And on the other side, it's kind of a Groundhog Day for me to come here. And I know it's not going to change anything, but I do it anyway. So my family is happy I'm not renting with them at home, I'm renting with you tonight. The district is addicted, we are junkies, to new taxes. You got to stop. You got to keep the costs under control. It's going to be endless. I've been attending meetings like this forever. I had actually one former board meeting with now here, Ms. Laura Anderson, in the public, who in front of me said, I want the whole enchilada, I want it now. It got to stop. We also are going to have a declining student population. So I don't see why costs keep rising. Minnie, I believe, she mentioned, the loud sound you heard, it's Proposition M crashing into Memorial Park today. I think 70% no. People are tired. We are being killed by 1,000 cats. I am on the Chamber of Commerce of San Anselmo. I'm talking personally now, by the way. It's not an official comment, but what everybody talks about is endless taxes. If Proposition M had passed, my own business in downtown San Anselmo, all the others coming next year, would be a $10,000 higher tax bill in 2020. And that's what it's all about. So I think it's a good point. Think what it would fail. And I have a technical question. Have you personally polled anybody? Because I've been living in this community 21 years. I never receive a single call to know what we think about new taxes. I do believe that the polling is biased. They want clearly, consultants want the bond to flow. So they'll tell you what you want to hear that is a good idea to go. Can you actually, the board, spend 1 hour and pick up, we don't have the phone book anymore, but and random calls families and think what they really think about a new tax? It might be a wake-up call for you instead of always being filtered by people who have a built-in interest to actually go ahead with the new bond. But thank you anyway for your work. Good night.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Hi, my name is John Grayley. I've got 3 kids at TAM. It's the first time attending a board meeting, and I wanted to say that I phone banked for Jay, and I'll phone bank for this one too, and I really firmly believe that we need the resources from our community, and I believe our community is very supportive of those resources. But what I want to talk about is where those resources are going to be directed. Last year, we had an austerity budget that cut the equivalent of 19 teacher lines and was very heavily weighted against the academics. And I'm very concerned when I see the presentations that we're getting in the local sites that those are baked in to future budgets. And I would like to see the board make a commitment to bringing back some of those teacher lines. And I think it's a great selling point to the public. We tightened our belts, we did what we needed to do, and we want to preserve our educational environment, and let's go forward, and we're going to try to bring back some of those missing lines. And if you don't think that those missing lines have effect on the schools, they do. My daughter had to make her choice between honors physics and music, and if you know anything about kids in honors physics, they're all in music. My son is in a music class with 40-something people in it now. What value does that have? So I think that it would be helpful if we could make a commitment to bringing back some of these teacher lines, reinvigorating the academics and the institutions. And we had to adjust our priorities last year. Let's recommit to the priorities that we've had all along as a district and what brought me and my family to this district. I did note in when I looked at the exhibits, what are they, B and C or A and B, there was a commitment to not having this increase be devoted to administrative supervisory salaries, which I really think is appropriate. It was taken out of Jay, but I supported Jay anyway. I think we need to make that clear to the electorate that that's something that's important to us, especially when we look at the increases that have been going on in that category for the last couple of years. But maybe the lawyers can address this issue. The one last issue I had with it is there's an escape clause in the exhibit that says those priorities can be rearranged if need be by the board and by the superintendent. And I don't know if that is actually legally appropriate, so it might be something that people can address, because if you're going to vote for one thing, but it says, no, it can be changed later, that might be somewhat problematic legally. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment before I open it back to the board to see if there's any further discussion or clarification that anyone would like to ask while we have William Tunick here and Sabrina?
I would love William to answer that legality question on the rearranging priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, so the short answer is no. So the measure is a contract with voters. What the measure says is it can be used for any of the purposes that are in the measure. The language about board priorities is intended to indicate to voters that at the end of the day, there may not be enough money to do all of those things, and so it's up to the board to decide which of the things listed in the measure the funds will be used and to what extent. But at the end of the day, the board can't decide to spend money on things that are not in the measure or something that the measure says they won't be spending on.
Thank you. Anything else? Nope. Okay, well, thank you. It was very helpful, and thank you, Sabrina, for coming too in case. Appreciate that.
Sorry, I didn't know we had Sabrina. I mean, I knew Sabrina was here, but I didn't know she was available to answer a question now.
Okay.
Can I ask a question
Yeah,
now?
sorry.
Do you mind talking about how you did the polling? Just briefly, I'm right.
Yeah. So we did not, our firm did not do the polling, but Godby Research did the
Okay,
polling.
so, yeah.
And so that was, what they did is they took a reliable sample of likely voters in March and November, and then they made sure to call those voters. I don't have the sample size in front of me. I think it was 600. I don't know exactly.
It was over 800.
800, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. And then that was to make sure that they texted, they emailed, they called, and made sure that the respondents were statistically reliable and representative of likely voters in March and November.
Thank you.
Can I add a point of clarification on a comment that we actually have fewer administrators this year than we did 2 years ago, and the administrators' salary increases are exactly the same as the other two units.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was wondering that. I didn't think that sounded right. Thank you.
Actually, Sabrina, do you mind coming back?
Hope you're wearing a stat gown.
So although it's not even 24 hours old, I'm guessing that you and some of your colleagues watched the polls come in last night in our county. Any comment or consideration based on those results?
Well, I know we were working closely with Reed, so we watched those polls come in last night, and that was 73% for parcel tax renewal. I think to the point of tax sensitivity and concerns, in the poll we did ask those questions. We did talk about taxes and potential measures on the ballot. So we feel like that was captured in the opinions that we got from the poll. And when we look ahead, I think, you look at March and November, and I know we've talked about this before, but revisiting it, the longer you wait, if you wait until November, then voter opinion can change, and the economy can change, and other things can change. And the November ballot also brings other issues too, right? The potential, they're gathering signatures to repeal Prop 13, and that will have an effect on voter opinion. Also, presidential elections have an effect on voter opinion. So we do still think that March is a viable option.
And based on the polling that you did, the results that you saw from the Reed School District parcel tax passing, knowing what's going to be on the ballot in March, what else is going to be on the ballot in March, do you and TBWB still stand behind recommending $190 increase?
We do, and I think, again, the voter opinion poll did show that voters are supportive of the measure at 2/3 rate. They are supportive of the programs that are funded by the parcel tax. They're supportive of the reasons to vote for the measure. And in that poll, we simulated a positive campaign and a negative campaign, and at the end of the day, they still were at 2/3. So that shows that you're in alignment with voters, which is good. There's always risk to putting a measure on the ballot, but in this case, you can let voters decide and make that decision. And again, the 190 amount is an amount that meets your needs and helps prevent some of those cuts that you'd like to prevent to academic programs and teachers and staff. So we recommend moving forward.
Thank you.
And I hadn't paid attention to the union numbers, but where was the polling on that relative to the 73%?
It was right around 70%.
So consistent with it.
It had no increase, nor did the other parcel tax.
Right.
Any other questions before she sits down?
No, thank you. That's good clarification. Okay, well, I think we'll then move on to legislative update. I think that's the next one. Doesn't look right to me. What am I missing here?
The partial tax.
I knew there was some, where is
At the
that?
very bottom, the parcel tax.
Oh, so I was right. Hey. Wait.
Approval of members, is it on here?
12F.
Oh, I see what I did. Okay. 12F, approval of members to Parcel Tax Citizen Oversight Committee for Measure J.
Yes.
For Measure J.
For Measure J.
Okay, that was a misprint. Okay.
So good evening, everyone. I just want to be clear, we are talking about Measure J.
Okay,
the
thank
measure
you.
That was passed almost 1 year ago to the date. And per the terms as we've discussed already tonight, in Measure J, what the board asked the community and the community asked of us is to provide a citizens oversight committee to ensure that we will be expending the funds provided to us by the community per the ballot language of Measure J. So we have not, as you may recall, we have not received those funds quite yet. Actually, those are being put out in the property tax bills that were placed in the mail in November. Those are the deadline for receiving them to the County of Marin Finance Department, our assessor's office, I should say, is December 10th without penalty. And so we have not quite yet received them, but we've budgeted for them. So in planning ahead for that, we posted an application out to the community in Dr. Topie's community newsletters, in Mary's board meeting updates, on our website to communicate the bylaws that the board in August approved, an application for what the responsibilities are, the purpose, again, not a decision-making body, but an oversight body to confirm we are spending those funds per the terms of Measure J. So I am proud to bring forward to the board for their consideration of approval for members who are willing to volunteer their time in this important role to ensure that and make sure there's full transparency and confidence of the community that we are indeed and we will be spending these funds in full alignment for the Measure J. The 4 applications are attached. I'm not going to necessarily read through them, but I've been in communication with all 4 members, so they're aware of this occurring tonight. But we're blessed to have, in my editorial opinion, 4 extremely qualified individuals who are committed to public education per their professional experience, their volunteer experience, their desire to get involved with their community. We only have 4 as now. Hopefully we'll have 5 at some point. We've continued to keep it open. But we have Jennifer Ginsburg from Corte Madera, who is actually employed with Spark. Spark is the Larkspur Corte Madera Foundation. I am a proud member of that with my children. They do an outstanding job, and obviously they're a part of our community. Tammy Wilkes Kornfeld, who I have not met, but has been on several committees involved. She showed an interest in getting involved in our school district, so we're glad to receive her application. Bill Levinson, who is a former superintendent of the school district, who has obviously a wealth of experience and familiarity with the school district. And John Richard. John Richard is a member of the San Anselmo community and has been a member of the Ross Valley School District's Citizens Oversight Committee. So again, a breadth of experience in the educational world, experience in oversight committees, volunteerism. So it's my pleasure to bring these 4 applications forward to the board for consideration in this very important role.
Any questions?
Not really, well, kind of a question. When the committee, should we approve these people and the committee we will remind them of what oversight means?
Yes.
Okay.
So as we discussed in August, and you reiterate, that's very critical difference between what oversight is and isn't. We'll make sure that aligns to the purpose of the committee. It's not a decision-making body, but oversight to ensure, again, the expending of the funds are in full alignment with the measure terms, which we are doing and gladly will continue to do. But again, ensuring that with for credible members of the community is a very positive thing. Thank you. To your point, Trustee Ronish, our recommendation is that we form this committee, should the board approve it tonight, for our first meeting in January, where really it'd be more about process, purpose, much of the things you just highlighted.
Is there any public comment? Ms. Anderson? No? Okay. Okay. In that case, can I have a motion to approve the 4 members for the Parcel Tax Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure J?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, I was a little late. Thank you, that passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corbett. Appreciate that. Okay, now we're on to now we're on to 12G legislative update.
Yeah, so just in keeping with doing this about once a quarter, making sure that you're aware of all the various things. And as we know, we've had a very active legislature recently. So I wanted to just give you an overview of where the governor landed on some of the bills, the October 13th deadline, and a few things that came up afterwards. So as we know, these are the bills that I'm going to go over. And things that we're still watching. One of them was mentioned by Sabrina, and that is the split roll. So the late start bill, or as we know as the Portantino bill, it did pass and it was signed. This will take effect in no later than the start of the school year in 2022. This will require high schools to start no earlier than 8:30 and middle schools to start no earlier than 8 a.m. We are allowed to have a 0 period. As you know, that is predicated on it can't be required, and it can only be a certain, I think, percentage of your student population. So it can't be like it's not required, you know, but 60% of our kids take, but you know, you can't get English unless you take it. We have begun the process. I have reached out to some of our feeder school superintendents to begin the process of discussing the impact it will have. It doesn't just impact us. It impacts, you know, as I've said before, you know, particularly here, the Golden Gate transit buses or the Marin transit buses also serve the Larkspur, Corte Madera school districts. You know, the Redwood location is much larger than Hall, and so we don't know if it'll be just an easy switch for the buses to drop off at Hall first and then go out and pick up for Redwood. So those are meetings that we have to have, you know, and there could be, you know, we have to look at traffic patterns and things like that. So we've started the process. I do think down in Tam, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult. Right now, Redwood and Hall start 15 minutes apart. Redwood starts at 8, Hall starts at 8:15. So if Hall stays at 8:15 and Redwood starts at 8:30, it probably won't be that big of an impact. However, we are pushing deeper into commute time. At TAM, it's different because right now MVMS starts at 8:40. Edna McGuire, which is their largest elementary, starts at 8:35. And TAM starts at 8, and those are all within about a mile of one another and in that sort of congested little corridor. So we'll be working with the town of Mill Valley and the Mill Valley School District around what this shuffle is going to look like, and being sensitive that will have a ripple effect. It will impact the other school districts around us. And San Andreas already starts at 8:20, so it's not, they'll just push 10 minutes, and Drake already starts at 8:30. So that those schools are okay. But I'm sure this will be a point of topic for many board meetings. Charter reform essentially made it a little bit more difficult, the reauthorization of charters. I I think that the second one is an interesting one, given what we recently faced this year, where we had some students who are in our geographic school area that were attending online charters that were shut down rather abruptly. So those are the kinds of charters that have come under deep scrutiny. They're online charters, and they're also authorized to operate outside of the physical boundary of the school district that authorizes them. So there's been a lot of reform around that. As you said, 2-year moratorium on the establishment of non-classroom based charters as well. The bill to substitute the ACT or an SAT for the CASP did not pass. I was actually hoping this one would. The short is that Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, who's one of the advisors to Governor Newsom, does not want to promote the SAT, ACT, but rather wants to promote the Smarter Balanced and would like to see the California, the UCs and the CSUs use that instead of the ACT or SAT. So, yeah, so that's going to, yeah. It's an interesting idea. I think that's a long haul to get there. This one is actually very interesting and could have ramifications on all districts across the state. So this one extends the time frame for which a lawsuit can be brought around childhood sexual assault. And I think the big piece is that this 3-year period where anyone that sort of opens it up, that there is no statute of limitations, is an interesting one. And it is something that Corbett and the CBOs and the superintendents have been talking about because it impacts potentially our insurance. You know, it's something that our insurers are looking at, and so there's been sort of dialogue, I guess is the best way to put it, around the, you know, again, we don't know, right? We don't know, but this does open a door that could, you know, could have financial implications for any district, not just us, given the fact that we weren't here 30 years ago and things like that. So we'll give you more updates as we learn more and as more information is shared around this particular bill. Corbett, do you have anything to add on this one?
Is that, so the way that's set, the way
it's
that
read,
reads, is it whichever's later, 40 years of age or 5 years from discovery, whichever
Yes.
is later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and to read the bill language, I had to read it like 6 times. I was like, wait a minute, what? At first I thought like 5 years old. Wait a minute.
So whichever's
Yeah, whichever is later, yeah.
The only thing I'd add, Dr. Tobey, is that this is something we're actively talking about at the DBO countywide meeting. Keenan, which is our school insurance provider for liability and also one of the large players in the entire state. There's a lot of conversation about concerns of nationwide insurance companies, where obviously this statute is specific to California. There's a fear that there could be some insurance companies that just may simply pull out of California, or if they come into play, if they stay, raise rates significantly because they don't know how to price this, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
We saw that with the current administration in DC's challenge to Obamacare, the single mandate payer. That obviously would really limit the volume of the pool for keeping prices down for Obamacare. We saw that with our rates this spring, that the insurance market didn't know how to handle it. They don't like unknowns. Rates went up significantly. So there's a concern we might have a similar impact until things settle.
Yeah, and potentially like limitations on coverage. It's, you know, they're figuring it out. They're figuring it out, but I don't think it'll play in our favor.
Does it seem likely to pass?
This did pass.
It did pass.
It did pass. These all passed. Yeah.
Let's got the veto.
Yeah. No, these were all, sorry, I should have made it, these were all the ones that passed by the October 13th deadline. This was one that snuck up on all of us. And yeah, I gave Jay Lack, our legislative aides, a earful on this. But it lengthened the short of the time for a classified employee to be probationary.
As I said, it was done to bring us in line with the merit-based districts. I don't know why they didn't have to come in alignment with us, but that's how it went. And we've had some discussion around this. Corbett and I were at the Schools for Sound Finance conference or meeting a few weeks ago, and it was definitely, there's the potential that this is going to have a negative impact on our classified employees, that you're not, one, on hiring practices, but two, on, it's really hard to know how well somebody's doing or on their feet. But if it's someone that, you have to make that call in 6 months and then they're your permanent employee, I think you're more likely to, this is editorial, I would more likely err on the side of, if I have a question, sorry. Because I don't have the time to work that out. So this was an interesting one that kind of hit us all. This was another one that, no, I don't normally put this many words on a slide, and I kind of did it purposely because this poster is a little bit crazy. These are all of the things that they want us to put on a poster that can be, it can be no smaller than 8.5 by 11. It has to 12 it's really, I'm not opposed to making this information available. This feels like an incredibly micromanaged bill. Anyway, so we, beginning in this January, we have to have these posters up in every bathroom, in prominent locations. Every locker room.
So have we ordered those?
We have to make them. We have to make them.
I know, but so you can make them.
Yeah.
It's similar to like the workplace protection.
Yes,
thing.
it reminds me.
Right, but they have to be specific to us. I mean,
Right.
and like names, phone numbers, email addresses, those are all site specific. So we have to go through and make them. We haven't made them yet. I mean, we haven't.
I mean, you could make one and laminate them, right?
Oh, yeah, no, we'll do that.
So
That's not the thing, but we actually have to physically make them and format them for each site. And, we haven't had time to do that yet, but we will probably be doing this over winter break, making sure they're done.
It's going to be similar to what's in the board policy.
It'll most likely be, all it is, yeah, it's not a hard task. It's another one.
It's another task, yeah.
But it's really important. And
It's important. It does. I mean, I think right now we have the National Sexual Assault Hotline posters up that, and we do have information up. It's, again, I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm opposed to them dictating to the level that they did what needs to be in it. I think making this information and reporting information readily available is very important. And I'm not diminishing that at all. And this was another one that kind of snuck up on a lot of people that didn't know that it was coming. But so we will have those up. We're also, there's some, people have been scrambling at the county level, and I emailed them, who's got a template?
Right.
And nobody has a template yet, so we'll have one. So some things that we're watching for the November 2020, the Prop 13 split roll would change some aspects of Prop 13 for commercial and industrial properties. It'll close some loopholes. It would basically change some of the rules around passing those down and adjusting how they're evaluated, or what's the word? Not evaluated, assessed. Thank you. The other one is the full and fair funding. So both of these are designed to bring more money into the school systems. The top one, if I'm going to get this right, the top one would generate about $9 billion, but only bring $4 billion but would bring $4 billion into the school districts. That one is polling very low. It's like 45%. The second one is also known as sort of the millionaire's tax. This would raise income tax on taxable income of businesses over $1 million, and also taxable income of individuals earning over $1 million annually. This one would bring in about $15 billion, and that would all go to the K-14 proportionately school just in California. So there's a lot of sort of talk out there that it's got to be one or the other. Both of these can't go. The second one is more popular, but both of them are going to face, as you can imagine, pretty strong opposition.
Why would the Prop 13 split roll be polling so poorly?
Because businesses have active campaigns against it.
So it's all,
Yeah, and I think, again, editorializing and corporate controlling, I also think some people feel that any adjustment to Prop 13 is a slippery slope, and it's, the third rail of politics. But, yeah, they also believe that this could have, deep pocket anti-campaigns that, national companies would be coming out to support.
well, in the campaign, I mean, you've been hearing it, I don't know if you've been hearing it on the radio, but Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association's been running extensive ads against it that's deceptive in the way it's describing it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Come to our website to find out how your property
Yes.
property taxes are going to be affected, and Prop 13 is going to be rolled back, period. Right, and so it's not a lie,
Yeah.
but it's not honest.
And it's not, yeah, I think most people hear Prop 13 and it's that they don't get further than that.
Speak to the distinction of how basic aid districts will be treated between the two?
Yes, I think I sent this out to you. So in the top one, that would be distributed through the Prop 98 funding formula or LCFF funding formula. So Corbett and I got excited and then we're like, never mind. For us, the minimum you would get is $100 per student, which is great. We would take it. That's what we would get. We would be, it's a formula, but anyway, we would not likely be able to get more than the $100 per student, whereas the full and fair funding was like $2-3 grand potentially.
Potentially, it's significantly more, and that would be available to all school districts.
Yeah, and that would be distributed outside of Prop 98 funding formulas. So for us, full and fair funding is definitely what we would support.
So if that passes,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is this information going to be used as we're going out for our parcel tax? Will people push back with this information like, oh no, there's something else that'll bring money to the school?
I don't know how well known either of these are out there. And again, the likelihood of either one of these passing is really slim. I believe. I don't think, they would both have strong opposition who would have deep pockets in order to fight, and this would be this is a statewide initiative.
They could, right? But it'd be a hard position because an anti-tax group would have to
Right.
fight a parcel tax because.
We would be getting a tax.
Exactly.
Right.
But let's, right,
Mm.
let's keep our
Sure.
ear to the ground and
Mm-hmm.
understand what the possible
Sure. Yeah.
ramifications could be so that we can.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting, if you think about the same people who are going to fight the Prop 13 are going to fight this because it's going to be businesses that are earning over $1 million. And, they don't want to see their taxes go up on that. Mhm.
One thing to add is you may be aware that there's a new law that even though neither initiative has passed in the legislature to be placed in the ballot, even if they eventually are, there's a new law where if the polling on those propositions are not favorable, they can actually revoke and pull that off the ballot prior to actually going precisely deadline closer, but it could be placed on and then pulled back. And that's what SF squares.
Yeah. I think it's August, they said they could.
I don't remember, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so there was a chance it wouldn't even make it to the ballot. Mm-hmm. And the other conversation that's come up is some people are encouraged, like people who support these are saying, not right now. Like pull those, pull them both off because we only got one bite at this, like we only get one shot at this. And the thought is like, wait, reorganize, make sure we have a stronger campaign. We don't have two different, so there is some people who even support this who are saying, let's press pause and pull this off, and for lots of reasons, a November 2020 ballot, so it's just something we're keeping our eye on. This was the details, but you see this, you can look at it, and that was the full and fair funding. So those are the legislative updates right now.
So can I ask particularly on the poster, and because we have the policy guide sheet from CSBA.
Yeah.
So literally that AB, so the sexual harassment prevention posters takes effect January 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
Updates don't come from CSBA until January 1st, and it's going to be, so how did the school district get notice of this?
In an update email from our...
Just the analyst.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah, so I caught it in an email. And I was like, whoa, wait, this...
You would think the California Department of Education would be sending.
Yeah, so it came out in one of those sort of, I was just scrolling through one of those emails, and it was sort of thrown in there. And I was like, oh, wait, this impacts us.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Okay, let's move on. 12I, discuss and determine a date for the annual organizational meeting. I guess we have to think about our calendars.
We skipped the board policy review update list.
I don't know what I'm having trouble tonight with this. I wonder if it's the colors.
It could be. And yours is printed differently than mine, so I'm not...
I'm just having a hard time seeing the font and everything. Okay, I'm
Can you
sorry,
open the
12H, review
guide
of
sheet,
board,
Mary?
review of board policy update. Sorry about that.
So can I speak on this?
Pardon me?
May I speak on this?
You may.
Okay. So everyone got a chance to look at it. It was attached to an email from Tara and then to the agenda. And so does anyone have questions on any of these before I ask questions? And I don't know if it's best to discuss this now or wait for Wes to come back, but so a lot of these look like they're policies we're going to have to approve. And based on an average of, I don't know, it looks like about 8, without knowing the body of them. I'm concerned because we haven't been getting 7 to 9 policies kind of every few months. And having practiced doing this in Kentfield, our policies to approve or amend were much healthier than I've seen in the last year here. And I would expect there are more that apply to high schools. So I'm wondering, are we missing things?
I will go back over the last ones, the last several that we got. And I'll be dead honest, I am doing 2 full-time jobs.
Right.
And, and so are things falling through the cracks? I would say for sure. We try to bring this to cabinet, but I acknowledge it, it hasn't been our strong suit. So I do think bringing it to the board when they come, and then working with a subcommittee of the board to I think it helps put some structures around it for us. As you know, things just get away from you, and suddenly PG&E is shutting the power off on you, and you're 3
There
days.
goes your week.
You lose a whole week of you're not really doing anything but
blackout week,
sitting on conference calls for hours on end.
So I would like to suggest that we form a subcommittee, and I'd be happy to serve on that as long as the time meets outside of the business, after 4:30. Because in Kentfield with policy, or what we did was we had 2 trustees meet with superintendent, or it could be 1 trustee. I mean, right? This is a bigger district, but and then we would the subcommittee would review this as it came in with the accompanying policies, decide what applies to us, and then bring that to the board in a packet. And we would attach this as the cover sheet to the policies we were actually looking at, and be prepared, obviously, whether it's Wes or whoever, I don't know who generally presents it, and then the trustee or trustees would be prepared to answer questions on it as well. And I think that's something that could be taken off your plate or assisted. That and it is really the board's responsibility too, because they are board policies.
Yeah, and I think just what would help me in that is just having a designated time that we were going to meet, like, it's true, it's like, okay, this is, if having that structure means there's dedicated time to it, and it won't just keep getting pushed to the side.
Right. And so what we had done is when the October packet came in, then Liz's secretary would send out an email saying, when are you available? Or we can just schedule, because it's probably easier for you to have a set time. So I don't, do you know when, do you know when you got this from CSBA? Like, does it come in October 7th?
Yeah, it came in just before October, right around our board meeting date. It came in just.
So it comes in the middle of October?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then maybe we could set a time in the third week of whatever month, because this comes every 3 months, I think.
Right.
And so we could just set a time every third week for an afternoon to set aside. Let's start with an hour, and then go from there.
Thank you. I'm assuming we have consensus that this is all a good idea. I mean, I think this is, I mean, I see a lot of nods, and I think we talked a little bit about this before, but I don't remember the particulars, and thank you for offering to head it up. Do we have any volunteers to be on the subcommittee? Yeah, only one other. Yeah, any other? What? I'll do it. Yeah. Oh, you're starting to lean forward. Oh, I spoke too soon.
Policy review, come on.
Yeah. No, actually, I actually kind of enjoy that. So no, I'm happy to work with you, and we can work out the particulars, and we'll go from there. So thank you.
Thanks. So then the last item is that the law changed last January, that the annual organizational meetings for school districts had to be within 15 days after the second Friday in December. The idea is that is when they certify elections. So they want those organizational meetings to happen after the election has been certified. However, we still have to approve the interim budget by December 15th. So in most years, we will be required to have a second board meeting in December for that. Next year, December 15th is a Tuesday. We know when we're having our December meeting next year. So this year, we did not think it'd be prudent to try to, we could have done a Monday night board meeting. We didn't think in cabinet that it would be prudent to actually change the meeting that we were going to do the budget. Just didn't want people thinking we weren't being transparent or trying to move a board meeting, so we thought just add a second meeting. My recommendation would be the December 17th, which is the next Tuesday. But that's just a, and I think it has to be a regular meeting, but that's just notice. It could be that the only items we deal with are the organizational meeting items.
So that means we would talk about committees and elect a board clerk and board president, and like I said, just the committees. We could just leave it at that. And what?
And assignments, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think of that, yeah. Assignments,
Is that what you mean by committees?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
So do you want to, let's see, it's only November, so we're okay if you need to go home and look at your calendars. But, or we could decide now.
I'm fine with that day.
17th is okay.
I'm fine with that day.
Yeah, I might have to call in. I have a business meeting in Seattle, but I might be able to call into that meeting and come to this one. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, but I think I can figure something out so that I don't.
Okay. So December 17th? Okay.
Yes, let's do December 17th.
We will add that to our calendar.
Yay, thank you. Okay. So now we're on to trustee reports and superintendent report. Would you like to go with your
Yeah,
superintendent?
I don't really have, I mean, the only thing I wanted to say is I just wanted to thank my staff and the community for the calm response during the PSPS. It was a learning curve, as we knew the first one really would be. I think hopefully we won't see another one like that where the entire county is shut down. I did want to take just a moment to clarify a few things. There were some polite, but wondering why we couldn't hold school without electricity. And so just trying to clarify for people that it's not that learning can't happen, it's that it's student safety issues. Some of the most prominent ones is we don't know about our fire suppression system. Our bathrooms and locker rooms are dark. They don't have natural light, so there would not be a way to really illuminate those safely. Our comprehensive campuses are not ADA compliant without electricity. If you've ever been around TAM's campus, it's difficult. And we also can't serve food properly without hot water, which we need our electricity for. So it comes down to a student safety thing. I think during this PSPS, we were also being asked to stay off the roads because of the fires up north. And if anyone tried to drive down East Blythedale during the power outage, it was like Frogger. It was insane. It was insane. The four-way stop thing, it was lost on some people, let's just say that. So, we tried to, we really, continuity of service is what we want to provide. We want kids in school when they should be in school. Some other considerations that came up, normally for us, if Redwood is good to go, we'll open Redwood, even if Drake and Tam can't open. But the other thing that happened in this one is when Redwood came up, 60% of the county was still without power. So I had some parents emailing me saying, look, we still don't have power. It's really hard, it was just hard for people to figure out how to get to school and do things without power. So there was a lot of considerations that went in. So I just want people to know it wasn't just about, we know that learning can happen, but there's a lot of other considerations that go into the operation of the school.
Not to mention the teachers that many of whom live north of Field.
Yeah, there was a big impact, with the Kincaid fire, just compounding it. But thank you, staff. We spent a lot of time together over a couple of days. I would really like to thank MCOE, Marin County Office of Education, did a tremendous job of organizing communication and keeping us all informed from the Office of Emergency Management. It went as smoothly as it could, given that this was sort of uncharted territories. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Trustee reports. So this is a time to share anything with fellow trustees that you think we would find interesting or helpful. And if you have any agenda items you want to throw out that we'll put in the hopper. I went to Temescal, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I want to go again. It was very helpful to see all the 3 programs, 4 programs. The pastries, yeah. It started out very good. It was very well organized, and being able to actually go into the classroom and the one part that I was really impressed was that there's, in the independent study program, there's a time where each student once a week will meet one-on-one with the teacher for an hour, and it's just a back and forth questioning, and it's, I think it's the English,
English and social studies.
So, yeah, and so my son went through the program, so I was familiar, I thought, I was pretty familiar with it, but this time I got to actually go in and sit right there at the desk with the student and the teacher, and not being an educator, I really enjoy that sort of thing, because I'm always intrigued with how educators are able to ask the question. But we did that twice, and it was so amazing how the students just didn't skip a beat, and was very, very impressed, and went to the team program, and the students talked about what special learning environment has done for them and their relationship building with the other students, having come back from this long camping trip, and how they thought it was really going to help them, in the world. It was very inspiring. Again, it made me feel like we have another little gem in our district that is, most people aren't aware of. So I really enjoyed that. And I highly recommend that when we do it again next semester. I know it's really hard. The scheduling is tough with everyone working and busy, but really recommend it if you get the opportunity. I think they're going to try and do it when you have your days off from Alameda.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's great. Yeah. So.
Because my spring break doesn't line up, or my winter, hey, we'll figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. So that's I think that's all I have to report. Okay. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, and I'm up for the norms. I think we did really well tonight. And we maintained a perspective with a sense of humor and definitely focused on the best interest of all students. And I can't think of anything we have to work on. So speak up if you have any complaints or. Okay, thank you, everyone.